You'd be wearing that shit. They'd be thinking it's you, man. I'm straight off the court. And we are live. Welcome to the NFL First Look. It's Sunday. It is October 15th. This is week something in the NFL. Six sounds right. Is it 7 or 6? I can't keep track any longer. It's 6. It's 6. It doesn't, as if it matters. I mean, I'd like it to be 5 and I have all of the information from last week, but I'd still find some way to screw it up. What's going on, everybody? I am Josh Engleman, here to get you primed and ready, fluffed up for the rest of our 3+ hours of coverage. We're going to have some fun. I'm going to talk a little bit of the foosball for today. I've got all of my exposures locked, ready to go. If we had to enter these contests in 2 minutes, I would be able to tell you every single bit of what I have. Shout out to OwnersBox for being the sponsor of this show and of the next 3 hours of content that you will see. We're definitely going to talk about OwnersBox in a little bit. I know that at some point in time, I'm going to win this contest this season. I can feel it. I'm hoping it's this week, so I don't have to tell you guys each week that it's going to be me. I feel like it's me, and then Jamar Chase goes out and scores 900 fantasy points, and all of a sudden I don't have much of a chance. That was last week. I looked up. I was like, oh, I'm in 5th. Thanks for that Zach Ertz touchdown. And then I looked back again, and I was in like 255th because Jamar Chase just kept doing every single thing possible to bury me across OwnersBox and on DraftKings. Good to see everybody here. 332 people in the door so far. Not nearly enough likes, though. Only 45. That's what I see on the screen. This number should be over 100 already. What are y'all waiting for? If you're here in the first 4 minutes of this stream and you don't hit the like button, you and I have some problems. The whole point of this is likes. I'm not asking for anything else. I'm not begging for money around these parts. I want likes. Likes and views. That's all I want. So come hang out with us. Hit that thumbs up. See, we're already up to 80. You guys just need a prompt. We need something that just flashes on the screen for like one frame. Jordan. Subliminal messaging on the video. We have, you just insert one frame of like button or, subscribe to OwnersBox or NFL Sims. That's the play, man. We need to get sneaky. We need to play an audio track in the background, like sub-perceptible levels of we're just in the background being like, you should sign up for the Sims. You should hit the like buttons. You're going to win all your money today. We need those positive affirmations in the background. God, we should try that. But write that down. Make a note of that. We're going to try subliminal messaging on the shows moving forward. Everybody that's listening, though, pretend you didn't hear that. We don't. If you know it, then it's not going to work as much. All right. I think we're ready to talk running backs, which means I'm allowed to let Jordan go and get a coffee. Let's get this started, folks. Let's get this started. Running backs for today. We're up over 100 likes, so we're perfect. Running backs for today. Do we want to start at the top of the salary tier? Do we want to start at the top of the ownership tier? So there's a couple ways that we could look at this. You know what? Let's start at the top of the salary tier because there's only one man to talk about in this, if we're doing it like that. And we can get him out of the way pretty quickly. As I filter down 2 running backs for the main slate, the first guy and only guy at the top of the salary tier is going to be Christian McCaffrey. $9,500. That is $2,200 more expensive than the next closest guy, which is David Montgomery, something that I don't think most people would have expected if you tried to just pick the salary tier 6 weeks ago. McCaffrey is on an island. He is very different than everybody else because of that price point. We're not projecting all that much ownership. He's 6.5% owned in our current ownership projections. He's like 9% optimal. I guess technically speaking, we're going to say that he's a little under-owned, and I don't have any issue getting to McCaffrey. I think it's hard. We have so many other good, better, like point per dollar plays, just better salary structures, but it's Christian McCaffrey. We know what he's been doing so far this season. There's a reason he's 9,500. I have no issue with it. The only real problem with McCaffrey is the matchup, and it's not as if like the Browns' run defense hasn't been anything special so far this season. They're 18th in rushing and PFF, but it's a good defense nonetheless. So maybe from a passing game that slows McCaffrey down a bit. If you like McCaffrey, if you have $9,500 in your lineup, I would never tell anybody to not go there. But at that salary tier, he's behind a lot of dudes. There's not a lot of ownership here. He's not any sort of cash game play. So I am mostly ignoring Christian McCaffrey with the knowledge in my head that he can go absolutely insane. He's really good. He deserves his price tag, but it's not going to be for me today. All right. Let's hit the rest of these running backs because there's a couple guys on the slate that I think you just have to immediately point out. We're going to go with the guy that I have the most of right now. And it's weird because his name is basically most of. Raheem Mostert, 6,400. This to me is the first guy you're putting into any cash game lineup today. He is the highest owned running back in our ownership projections. He is my most exposed running back. And this is something that we've talked about for the first couple weeks. At running back, I mostly want to focus on feeling good about the guys that I pick. Wide receiver, you can start making some weird stances, but trying to grab guys that you don't expect to play a ton at running back starts to become a little bit scary. And we don't have to worry about everybody's favorite player. No Achane this week. So none of that matters for us. We can just simply go to Raheem Mostert and feel really good about it. And you should. He looks great. Most exposed running back is Raheem Mostert. We work our way down. There's a couple more guys in this same ownership tier. Whether or not I'm getting to them is a bit up in the air. Josh Jacobs is second in ownership, basically tied with Kyren Williams. Jacobs is 7K. Williams is 6,500. I have basically around the field. I don't have any major thoughts for those two guys. They should be getting ownership. They are getting ownership. I've got my eye on it. There's some value guys that I'm a little bit more interested in than it seems like are getting enough ownership. D'Onta Foreman at 4,400. If you want to go all the way to the bottom, well, not all the way to the bottom, but pretty close to the bottom. He's not getting nearly as much ownership in our projections as I think he should be. He's 9% owned. I have a little bit more right now. I'm about 15, so coming close to double. And then we also have at 16% owned. So he is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th in ownership. Chuba Hubbard is 4,300. He is pulling about 16% ownership. I have about 28. He's my third most owned running back. Those are the two spots that I have my eye on if you're looking for value. D'Onta Foreman, Chuba Hubbard at the top. Raheem Mostert is the priority, but I haven't even hit you with my second biggest priority for today. He is getting ownership, 17% owned, 7,100. You guys know who I'm going to say? It's Travis Etienne. Had to be, right? I'm not a big fan of the Indianapolis Colts, no matter what happened last week. I think that was last week. All these weeks are starting to really blend together. Colts rush defense on PFF is 17th. Etienne, I think, looks the best of everybody in that tier. Like, I prefer Etienne to Jacobs. I prefer Etienne to Alvin Kamara. Both of these guys are 7K and 6,800 respectively. That's where I've got my eye. So it's Mostert as my priority. Travis Etienne is my number 2. And then I'm heading to the bottom, looking at Foreman, looking at Chuba Hubbard. I have no problem with $7,300 David Montgomery. He is another guy that's pulling a little bit of love. He's at the 16% mark. We basically have this tier of dudes in the teens: Kamara, Mixon, Etienne, Montgomery, and Hubbard. Depending on who you're looking at in that range, they're all basically the same salary. Montgomery's fine, but at 7,300, he feels a tad overpriced. I don't know. Is that just me? Am I crazy for that one? We've got the Lions taking on Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay does have the absolute dead last rush defense at PFF. That makes Montgomery stand out, but I think you're already paying for it. He's good, not great. I'm right around the field. No major priorities there. Let me look at chat, see what everybody's doing, because we're up to 700 people. We're well over 100 likes now, so that's what we're talking about. Einsteinium, no Kenny Walker love this week. No. I have precisely 0%, and he is mostly unowned. Sloppy Steaks wants to know who's up next as the host for the next show. That one's easy. We've got Dave Loughran coming up next, hosting the deeper dive from 10 o'clock until they finish, 11:30, 11:45, something in that neighborhood. Ben Raza will be joining him. What's up? Wait, there's no Loughy? Well, that's news to me. I assume, Sloppy Steaks, you asked me that question because you had more information than I do. No Dave Loughran today. Spags and Ben Raza will be breaking down all of the games. What is that, 11 games today? 11 games, all 11 games in thorough detail for an hour and a half plus. And then you get NFL live before lock from the time they finish it up all the way up until 1 p.m. Should be a good time. My bad, guys. I had no idea. Jordan, did they hear you when you said that? Okay. So you guys didn't hear Jordan telling me that Loughy is not on this show. So now I know that he is not there. So no Loughy. I guess the deeper dive is going to be a lot better today. Yeah, I said it. Anybody have any other running back questions before we keep it moving? Because we're about halfway done already. It doesn't take long. It does not take long. Good to see you. 3 running back build today. I have 228% ownership going to running backs. So it looks like I'm doing a 3 running back build, like 1 out of every 4 lineups. Thoughts on Swift? I actually don't mind him at all. I think he's a little under-owned. He is a guy that I'm a bit over the field on. Toasted biscuits. So there we go. Sloppy Steaks. Apparently you do have more information than some people, because I did not know that Loughy was not doing the deeper dive today. I had no idea. No clue whatsoever. All right. 750 viewers, 100 and something likes. Make sure you're hitting that like button. Let's get on to wide receivers. This is where I think everything is pretty easy to talk about. We've got the top end, 2 guys at the top of the heap. Tyreek Hill is 9,300. Cooper Kupp is 9K. That's where we start in terms of salary. Tyreek Hill and Cooper Kupp are basically the same ownership, and I don't really have much to add there. I have no problem paying. I would rather pay 9,300 for Tyreek Hill, 9K for Cooper Kupp, than 9,500 for Christian McCaffrey, if you're looking to compare one to the other. I have 31% of Tyreek Hill right now. That is my 3rd most exposed wide receiver. I have 27% of Cooper Kupp. That is my 4th most exposed wide receiver. I have no issue whatsoever paying up to the top to get to the true class of the wide receiver position. I think that's pretty simple to look at. Miami gets Carolina. I like that for Tyreek Hill because he's Tyreek Hill. Cooper Kupp against Arizona. Yeah, I'm good. Now, Jamar Chase is the guy getting the ownership. Chalk wide receiver play for today, $700 cheaper than Cooper Kupp. I think Jamar Chase is just a bit overowned. Now, coming off of last week's game where he went absolutely bonkers, I understand it. And he looks good. I think he projects really similarly to Tyreek Hill and to Cooper Kupp. And the salary certainly helps by saving 1,000 underneath Hill or 700 underneath Kupp. But if the ownership is already there, and I think those 3 guys are pretty similar, I think it's easier to get away from Chase and spend up a little bit more to cut that ownership a bit. So I still have 12% Chase, but I'm going to be under the field there. I don't think that Devontae Adams or Puka Nacua, honestly, are all that different than Chase. Chase certainly has like the higher, big play upside over Puka. Puka's probably going to get there a little bit more from a volume standpoint, and who the hell knows with Cooper Kupp back. But I think all 3 of those guys look pretty similar, with Chase having the bigger ceiling. The problem is Chase is just pulling so much more ownership. Adams is at 14, Puka Nacua is at 10, Chase is at 24. So I don't want to get all the way to the Chase ownership. In a cash game, yeah, you're going to go to Jamar Chase because he's the more cost-effective guy at the top. He's the better point per dollar play. Large field GPPs, I see it a little bit differently. After that, we don't really have any high-owned wide receivers. Jamar Chase is the only guy above 20%. Christian Kirk at 5,400 is 2nd. Marquise Brown at 5,300 is 4th. I'm going to talk about those guys right now because Christian Kirk is my 5th most exposed wide receiver. At 5,400, I want to eat up that exposure. I don't mind that he is getting any love. Again, Jacksonville against Indy, like that spot. Marquise Brown, yeah, I'm going there as well. 34% owned for me. Marquise Brown is my number 1 exposed wide receiver at this moment. I like it. Look, from a point per dollar standpoint, you're not going to find much better in this mid tier. You really aren't. It just looks better there. And as I pull up the list, Marquise Brown, past 2 weeks, 4 targets in week 4, 10 targets in week 4, 10 targets in week 5. I'm going to look to see that number continue. I mean, he's had 10 targets in 3 of the 5 weeks. He's at the top of the list. He's looked at more than anybody else for Arizona. That is the direction that I am looking to go. So I am eating the chalk on Christian Kirk and Marquise Brown. I think both guys very much deserve that ownership. The one guy that I'm getting to a lot that is also pulling at least a little bit of ownership, where's the number? Josh Downs, 10%. He is 4,100. I think that's the guy that I'm looking for if I want a little bit of additional value. We've got Robert Woods at 3,800, a bit more owned. I think I prefer going to Josh Downs by a little bit. That's just me. If you want to pay down differently, I understand. Downs, 6 targets last week. He had the 12 target week in week 3, then follow that up with just the dreadful week 4. I'm figuring you're looking at something around 7 targets at 4,100. That is my preferred pay down option. I do have a little bit of Robert Woods, but I have much more of Josh Downs. And I think Downs works if you're trying to get to Jacksonville, which you should be. Lawrence looks great. Christian Kirk looks great. I like Josh Downs on the way back. And when we get to tight end, I will talk to you about how much Evan Ingram is the best tight end you can get to. If we're looking for anybody else that I have for today, Adam Thielen is a guy that I'm taking a bit of a stand on. KJ Osborne is a guy that I'm taking a bit of a stand on. I'm relatively neutral to Michael Pittman. Jordan Addison is a guy that I'm taking a bit of a stand on. That's probably it in terms of guys I'm well over the field. I'm really skipping this like 6 and 7K range. A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jalen Waddle, Mike Evans, Devonta Smith, Godwin, Metcalf, Ridley, Olave, Moore, Higgins. I basically don't have these guys. That 6 and 7K range, it's not where I'm going to be. Loading up in the 5s, getting myself up to the 8K plus range, and then just going all the way to the bottom if you need to. That is what wide receiver looks like. We're already at 949, which means it is time. We're already up over 200 likes. We're up to 1,000 people. Keep running that like number up. We should be clear of 300 or 400 by the time we finish this bad boy off. We got to talk OwnersBox. Sponsor of this show, we've been talking about OwnersBox every single week for the past 6 weeks. Today will be no different. Let's just talk about what you get if you click the link in the chat or the link in the description of this video. On our end, you're going to get our NFL Sims Max package for a week. That'll cover you for DraftKings, FanDuel, OwnersBox, for all the main slate stuff today. It'll cover you for primetime football tonight, Monday night football, Thursday night football as well. This is our brand new Sims package for this season. We're 6 weeks deep. You can generate a contest of 10,000 lineups in a minute. Simulate all of those lineups against each other. You'll find projected ROI data for positions, stacks, lineups. You will never have this much granular data to look at when you're building out your lineups. It is the best tool on the market, bar none, and you can check it out for a week. You will also get up to $500 in OwnersBox after you make your deposit. They're going to match your deposit. You put in 500, they'll give you 500. You put in 100, they'll give you 100. So right away, you're doubling up your money on OwnersBox via OwnersBox. It's a standard drip bonus. Unlock it at like 4.5% or 5%, something like that. I only have $80 left. I've already cleared $420 of bonus in the first 5 weeks. They've got the 125K kickoff going today. 25K to first. This is a contest that overlaid last week and has overlaid basically every week this year. I expect reduced rake at a minimum, hopefully some overlay, but you guys should get in it because I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's the best contest in the industry. You don't got to worry about kickers or defenses. This is the way to do it, guys. Superflex. It's just way more offense, way more fun. Sign up at OwnersBox today. Alrighty, we're through the running backs. We're through the wide receivers. Couple more positions before we get out of here. We will be quick with tight ends, quarterbacks, and defenses. And as we look at tight end, it's the easiest decision to me this week. The number one guy that you can get to, your cash game tight end, for me, is going to be Evan Ingram. I don't know how you don't want to go there. Colts are not a team that I am worried about in any way. Ingram, 8 targets in week 2, 8 targets in week 3, 8 targets in week 4, 8 targets in week 5. I'm hoping he gets at least 8 again today. Evan Ingram is the best tight end you can get to. He is my most exposed tight end by a mile. Don't overlook that ownership. Don't care about it. I will be happily getting to Evan Engram. My second most exposed tight end is actually Dalton, or sorry, I was about to say Dalton Schultz, is actually Zach Ertz, the guy that I needed to score another touchdown last week, but unfortunately was not able to do so. Really light in the target department last week, only 4. One of them happened to be a touchdown, which helped, but 10 targets the week before, 10 and 8 in weeks 1 and 2. I'm happy to go to that $3,600 price tag for Ertz. Only Evan Engram and Ertz are above 10% in ownership. Neither one of those numbers are all that problematic. I don't have a single tight end other than Engram or Ertz above 10% ownership. So if I don't have one of those two guys, I'm just basically filling in with something random. Maybe he's getting added in as part of a stack. Maybe it's just salary filler, whatever. Like I only have 4% of TJ Hawkinson. I didn't get to Laporta, to Kittle, to Goddard. I'm just not really in that area. If you like Logan Thomas or Kyle Pitts, I think both of those guys are fine if you need a little bit of value. But if you're going to tight end, particularly in a cash game, Evan Engram is the guy that you're looking for. Defense. We're not going to spend too much time here, nor should we. Because if you guys have been watching these shows for a while, you know that this isn't really a fun thing to talk about. Not a single defense projected for more than 10% ownership. We've got the 49ers D coming in at a crisp 9.9. Niners have a date with Cleveland. We know that the Cleveland quarterback situation is not looking good. I understand why everybody wants to get to San Francisco, but they are 4K. Are they the most owned team? Yeah. Are there better spots for you? Sort of. Like, do I want to spend up for the chalk defense today in bulk? No, not really, but I still have them right around the field. The defense that I have the most of for today, I don't like it, but it feels kind of good. Minnesota Vikings at 3K. They're 4th in ownership at 9%. They are taking on the Chicago Bears, and I'm willing to take my chances in Chicago with the Vikings defense. We close it out at quarterback. 954, 200 and something likes, 1,100 people. Hit that like button, folks. NFL Deeper Dive coming up next. My most exposed quarterback for today. Oh, I don't want to talk about it. Okay, Matt Stafford is the chalk play. He's 6,100, 14% owned. That's 2% ahead of Joe Burrow. Matt Stafford is one of the quarterbacks that I'm getting a little bit more of. I think if you're playing cash, it's either going to be Stafford, Burrow, or Trevor Lawrence. They're the top 3 guys in cash. Maybe you go to Tua at 7,600, but I think you're probably looking at that Stafford, Burrow, Lawrence trio. I prefer Stafford in that scenario, but my most exposed quarterback. Do I even want to say this? I might invalidate everything that I'm doing here. Is that possible? If I say this, are you guys going to just hate me? I think you're going to hate me. Look, 27th in defense on PFF right now. I don't want this in my life, but my most exposed quarterback in large field contests is Josh Dobbs. Yeek. Yeek. It's not good, guys. It's really, really, really not good. It's not good. But I'm letting you guys know that's where I'm going. Rams defense has not been good this year. Full stop, not great. Rams in coverage on PFF, dead last. It's Josh Dobbs season today, folks. Who's joining me on DraftKings going after Josh Dobbs? Anybody? Anybody? Would it help if I told you that that's not the only guy that I'm going to that I don't think is any good? All right, I'm going to say this again, guys. Please don't judge me for my opinions. We got to get this up over 300 likes. My second most exposed quarterback as of right now, it's Gardner Minshew, baby. Minshew mania is happening today. Get yourself a little bit of Minshew. Only 7% owned or somewhere in that neighborhood right now. Where do we have it, actually? Minshew, we have it 5%. Minshew's a guy that I'm looking at because I think it allows you to make a slightly more interesting stack for this game. If you like Ridley, if you like Kirk, if you like Evan Engram, Trevor Lawrence is getting twice as much ownership as Gardner Minshew. If you think the Colts are going to be in this game, maybe you go to a Gardner Minshew, Michael Pittman stack, and then you're bringing along ETN, Ridley, Kirk, Ingram. You can grab 2 pieces from the Jacksonville side, give yourself a more unique structure because you're getting a quarterback at the top that isn't as owned as Trevor Lawrence. I think that's a little interesting. it's a 2-to-1 gap in ownership, but I don't think it's 2-to-1 in terms of performance. I think Lawrence beats him a little bit less frequently. If we just look at our boom percentages, Lawrence is at 5.4. Gardner Minshew is at 3.3. So like I said, the ownership is showing double, but I don't see it like that. If you want to be a little different, you can just flip Lawrence to Minshew. That's where I stand at quarterback. Most exposed teams, before I get out of here and turn this one over to the NFL Deeper Dive, Jacksonville. I don't think that's surprising. Heavy stands on ETN, Kirk, and Ingram. Miami Dolphins, big stand on Mostert and Tyreek Hill. All these names that I'm saying, very good plays today. Don't overwhelm yourself with the chalk. It's okay to roster guys that get ownership, no matter what Jesse tells you on Twitter. Marquise Brown, Zach Ertz, they put Arizona into the 3 spot. Jacksonville, Miami, Arizona Cardinals, my 3 most exposed teams. And we are done here, folks. Don't go anywhere. NFL Deeper Dive coming up next. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, sign up at OwnersBox. You're getting Ben, Chris Spags, coming up next. Hour and 45 minutes. Enjoy it, folks. I'm out of here. Peace.
Feel psyched up. You should be a coach.
Well, pat on the butt before we start the show.
Yeah. Have fun. All right, friends. We are here. We are live. No, I'm not Loughy. Confirmed, but the deeper dive rolls on. We got 90 minutes for you here. Then we're going to turn it over to the Live Before Lock crew. And we're going to get you set for all things NFL today. You guys know the drill. I know all the loyal listeners are in the house. Josh got the crowd warmed up. I caught the end of his show. We're here to take it to the next level. I am Ben Rasa. I am joined by a man that knows football because he carries a football in his hand during the show. Chris Spags is with me. There is a football there, is there not? I
had to grab it immediately.
Okay, I was going to say, if you don't have the football, we're going to have to do this again. There he is. How you feeling, sir? I do want to ask you, we're going to get to all things on these 11 games. We're going to talk about OwnersBox. We're going to talk about the plays you need to know. Did you watch USC last night? Did you watch your boys?
Yeah, I did not enjoy that game very much. USC Notre Dame rivalry, a famous one back when I was in college, was the Bush Push, which has now been rebranded as the Brotherly Shove on the Red Zone Network. But a lot of great memories there. And since I have graduated from USC, Ed has been getting stomped on the nuts year after year. Every team that looks good ends up falling in some way to get dusted by Notre Dame in particular. Like if Washington smokes us, Oregon smokes us, whatever. Notre Dame, Ben, you are the college football expert. To lose to Notre Dame like that is one of my least favorite things as an alum that's happened in the last, 15 years.
It hurts. I'm no fan of Notre Dame. Backed them last week against Louisville. They no-showed, and then we got this. But you know what? That's a show for another time. You can catch all things college football on this very channel on Saturdays. But we're ready to talk NFL. Before we get into the game, Spags, I always like to do this and just ask you, big picture. I do this with Matt Gajewski in college football. When you looked at the pricing, when you looked at the slate, were there any themes that stuck out? Did you find it kind of difficult to build? Did you notice things that maybe you didn't think? Totals look pretty methodical. Were there any kind of macro themes that you noticed with these 11 games?
I think the main things to me is that there is not a spot that jumps out as the one that you have to get to like in the last few weeks. And I don't think there's the kind of trap door, the Home Alone traps that we've had in terms of ownership so far to start the year, where you've had your Jamal Williamses, you've had your Josh Kellys, you've had last week Khalif Raymond and Wan'Dale Robinson. This week, I don't think there's a trap like that. The chalk play of the week is going to be Raheem Mostert. And I think that's probably the best play we've had this season, just in terms of the opportunity, the matchup, the Vegas total, all of that. So I guess in some respects, my main instinct was try to build with the Vikings right away. It seems like the field's going to do that less so. But besides that, I just feel like there isn't sort of a wild thing that everybody's going to be doing this week, Ben, unless there's something you're seeing that I'm not yet.
Not really. That's why I kind of wanted to ask you. To me, I like a slate like this. There's, pretty wide open. There's a lot of different styles. I think we have a fascinating situation with Christian McCaffrey basically in his own price tier. Of course, we're going to get to that, but I like that there's a lot of different options. And just looking at our tools, our ownership, our stacks, yes, of course, there are guys that grade out towards the top, but there's not, this one giant decision point. And I'm excited about that. But let's dive in. I see everyone. I'm gonna steal Loughy's line because I couldn't think of anything more clever. Atone for your sins. You guys know the drill. If you could hit the like button, subscribe to this very channel. We're gonna be near 100,000 soon, and we want you as part of that here at Stochastic. It's a good time, but we get it started with Washington and Atlanta. It's a 1-point spread. Atlanta in the Dome, they seemingly only play home games. I don't know, maybe that's just me. But Washington is coming in off the mini bye. We saw what they did, just an awful performance against Chicago. And I want to start with the Commanders side. You've got Sam Howell, you've got some pass catchers in a competitive game inside. When you look at Washington, where do they fall on the priority list for you today?
Not that highly. Sims definitely not going to be much of these guys at all. Of course, Sam Howell, I think, showing some signs of life here. The Commanders quietly the highest pass rate over expectation in the league, throwing it a good amount of the time, about 8% more than they're expected to. So maybe some signs of life there if Atlanta can pull ahead in this one. But the Commanders side, I don't have a lot to love. I guess Logan Thomas would be the one that I would point to the most. He was a guy coming into the year that I thought there was a chance he can get that fractional Travis Kelce role, which you'd expect with Eric Bieniemy and what he's bringing from the Kansas City offense. And if Logan Thomas can stay healthy, I think we are inclined to see at least some, I wouldn't say Kelce-like games, but Kelce-adjacent games. You're kind of using this guy, Logan Thomas, who has a similar skill set, but certainly not the same level of skill set as Travis Kelce. And I think he stands out to most of me. But Ben, are you going here at all? Because not the highest total. It's not the prettiest game, but I actually think the Atlanta side's a lot more interesting.
Yeah, we'll get to the Falcons for sure. I don't have a ton. Of course, Logan Thomas, we're going to talk about actually Kyle Pitts in this very game. There's a couple of tight ends in that same range. And Logan Thomas did stand out. The guys that I was not drawn to, but I really dug into, first of all, was McLaurin, because I'm kind of waiting. The only play I can think of for him this year was recovering a fumble randomly in the end zone. That was kind of his ceiling play so far. He's done little to nothing, and he's getting a healthy amount of targets, but, the QB issues are a little difficult. He's down to 5,500 on DraftKings. I'm just not sure I'm getting there in any massive amount. And I don't have Howell in my pool. I know you mentioned you're not getting a lot. So outside of Logan Thomas, it's tough. And then, I mean, feel free to talk about, Robinson. Gibson didn't even register a carry last week, but it's still hard to trust them, even in a game that could go their way.
Yeah, I think there's not a lot to love in terms of Washington's approach so far this year. And again, Atlanta's defense has just been a little bit better than you would think. Obviously, they were very dedicated to improving that defense through free agency this year. Made a couple key acquisitions both up front, the secondary and all of that as well. So I could see that. With McLaurin, I think the biggest issue is they're not really uncorking Sam Howell downfield. That was sort of his strength in college, as Ben can attest. I'm sure as Matt Gajewski can attest on Live Before Lock show coming up. At UNC, he was just a chucker. He was a guy who got the ball downfield, and now they seem like they're really reining him in a way. And the best part of his game so far this year has been attacking downfield, as a 44% completion rate, 0.61 EPA, which is his best EPA mark anywhere on the field. So I think for Howell, if they can sort of push towards his strengths and allow him to be a little bit more of a chucker, then McLaurin gets there more. Dotson probably gets there a little bit more instead of being these low A dot targets. But they're using these guys, Ben, like they're, I don't know, like they're Sky Moore and like they're, I don't want to liken everything to Kansas City, but they're using these guys like they're just these low A dot, close to the line guys. And I think that's a big undersell in what McLaurin's upside is.
On the other side, the Falcons are a slight favorite. I do kind of like them, in the odd chopper world. I do have a little wager on the Falcons. Did that last week, lost by the hook. Hopefully it'll be better here. Last week, Bijan Robinson let me and a lot of people down. He did minorly salvage with a receiving touchdown, but it still wasn't even close to what we were looking for. He had 2 targets and 14 carries. I want to start with him. Where does he fall kind of in your running back rankings? And then feel free to kind of open it up and talk about this Falcons team.
So I think Bijan looks pretty good. I imagine, at least right now, I'm going to kind of massage the ownership here. And I think I'm probably going to be a little bit under on Josh Jacobs, who does come up as a pretty strong simulation play, but we'll talk about him when we get there. But for Bijan, I like the play still. This matchup against Washington. Washington's defense is one that this year, getting a little bit healthier, I would think would get better. As the year has gone on, they're actually emerging as one of the worst defenses in the league so far. They're not stuffing the run very well, just a 15% stuffed run rate. Their EPA metrics, positive EPAs, of course, expected points added, which means these guys are contributing more every time they touch the ball to get to points on the field. 0.08 EPA per dropback, 0.09 EPA per pass, 0.1 EPA per rush is actually the worst mark in the league now. So if Bijan can get going there and doesn't lose too much of Tyler Algier, I think he's in a pretty good spot as sort of a different price point in some of the chalk running backs as well. So I like Bijan, but I've actually been intrigued by Ritter stacks here. I know you mentioned Pitts, but biggest game of his year last week, I guess biggest game of his career last week. And now this matchup that might be a little bit friendlier in a dome, I think it might be a good time to give a shot to Ritter, even if you don't want to go crazy on it.
So I want to get into that because it is true, despite them probably doing everything they can to limit him, he's still throwing. He's thrown 30 or more attempts in 4 straight games, and some of those have been near 40 attempts, including last week, 37 passes, 329 through the air. Are you getting Robinson with Ritter in terms of just kind of building out Atlanta stacks? Certainly we'll talk Drake London and Pitts, but like, how do you see yourself getting to Ritter in terms of the stacks?
I think a Ritter, Robinson plus Drake London build is kind of interesting. And London's not been that great on the year. He's technically not the highest target earner on the team. That is still currently Kyle Pitts, 6.4 intended touches per game for Pitts, 6 per game for Drake London. But we know Drake London has this talent. I mean, again, another USC guy who also didn't contribute much to my joy in his USC career, but still for the most part, a guy that could beat press coverage, a big bodied guy who has, kind of these alpha apex predator receiver tendencies that I think can be good. So I'm willing to go to London this week. I do think London, Robinson, Ritter would be an interesting QB +2 to go to. I think you can also go to Ritter and Bijan if you want. There's certainly 2 guys that can get some red zone rushes for themselves, which I think can get there. Not the most obvious direct correlation, but in terms of just the team putting up an outlier points total, it could definitely come at the hands of Ritter and Robinson. But I think there's a couple different ways to attack it. And the tight ends, I think, also in play. And unfortunately, both Pitts and Jonnu Smith, I think, are in play if you are going to try to play Ritter or not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking right now, again, across the sites, giving you a peek at some of our ownership. At OwnersBox, guy like Jonnu Smith is north of 10%. Certainly, Bijan's getting a lot of love, and on DraftKings FanDuel, same story. But last question, and then we can move on to the next game, just to build it out, because I like to talk through these stacks with you. If you go, say, like Ritter, Bijan, London, are you worried, or are you trying to get, say, a Logan Thomas or a McLaurin on the bring back, or are you okay saying, I'm going to go Falcon stack, and I'm not really worried about Washington?
I do think that going to Logan Thomas as the bring back, if you're not playing Jonnu Smith or Pitts, is kind of interesting, but I know that I have the level of faith there. I've been trying to not force as many bringbacks because I have seen enough data that shows the bringbacks, and the Sims too every week kind of show that the bringbacks are not always going to be a biggest part of the outlier lineups. Obviously, we see them on a macro level or on a micro level sometimes, where like the winner last week has a lion and the team going against them. Like sometimes that happens, but I think that's a little bit more of an incidental thing sometimes, at least based on some of the back tested data. So I haven't been forcing bringbacks as much, but I agree that like if you are going to put one in, I think game theory wise, Logan Thomas makes a lot of sense because he then just has to beat Pitts and Jonnu, and I think that's certainly safely in the range of outcomes.
Moving on, we got Washington. We just talked about them. Minnesota and Chicago, little divisional matchup. Vikings road favorites slightly, 43.5 point total, pretty healthy. Both teams, I mean, I don't even know if desperate renders because they might just be out of it at this point. Certainly the Bears are just trying to avoid the basement. But both teams 1-4 right now. Let's start with the Vikings. You should be happy. Jordan Addison certainly getting his moment here, a fellow Trojan, but Cousins certainly down the guy. Talk to me about kind of that domino effect for Minnesota as we start to break them down.
So without Jefferson out there, you're losing about 12 targets a game, which feels like a lot. I know sort of the risk point of that is that certainly they don't have to throw those 12 times. They can throw 5 less. They can throw 10 less if they wanted to. But this is a Minnesota team that has been a very high pass rate team overall, pass rate over expectation overall in the field, an 8% pass rate over expectation in the red zone. It's possible they go to their running backs, but I do think that we haven't seen that level of confidence there for them in Madison or Akers. Last week, that gets as close to a 50-50 timeshare as it has been at any point this year. So I actually think this stack is kind of interesting, and Cousins' price point is not appealing. It feels like a price point that was set before Jefferson's injury. $7,100 price tag on DraftKings does not look that good, but I think it's entirely possible you see Cousins go to a double stack again. Addison would stand out to me. I think Osborne is a fine play, supposedly playing the Justin Jefferson role, probably not playing it as well. And Brandon Powell at 3K has been a great target earner throughout his career so far. Preseason hero a couple of years ago for the Rams, but a guy too that knows this system is coming in, and he's actually targeted more on the field than a guy like than Addison is. Also a guy like Osborne is. So I think there's a couple different ways to attack it, and that doesn't even include Hawkinson. So are you willing to go here, Ben? Because it is, the potential to get ugly is certainly there.
Oh, it's definitely potential to get ugly. And it's a game that I do kind of like. So first thing that, of course, is very interesting. I look at our top stacks tool. Minnesota's not getting a lot of love there in terms of the ownership. And that's a good thing, because if you go to Cousins, typically, I think it's pretty safe to say that those stacks almost come like preloaded with Jefferson. It's hard to think in a normal week, okay, I'm not going to pay 9,000 plus for his alpha on the outside. But now we have Cousins stacks where the total salary is much lower, even if you have +2. And you mentioned a guy like Powell. That changes the dynamic of your lineup if you want to get a McCaffrey or something like that. So I'm totally there. I just want to clarify, because you mentioned this, and I think I'm with you. Are you getting to Madison and Akers in that situation? Or are you just saying, give me the pass catchers, whether they're actual wide receivers or Hawkinson, and I'm going to avoid the backfield?
I think I'm avoiding the backfield here. Just it being close to a 50-50 split last week, and there's so many good spots in this slate. Again, I mentioned Josh Jacobs. He's a guy I don't love in the matchup against the Patriots, but projection-wise, is impossible to ignore. Mixon in a good spot on paper, another projection all-star. Raheem Mostert, another guy who's going to be the chalkiest player on the slate. Like, those are 3 right there that I think are really strong plays. So to force your way to Madison. And then even still, you have Chuba Hubbard in that Carolina game, and it's like, okay, he's cheaper. He has a full role theoretically, unless he loses some to Raheem Blackshear, whoever else behind him. It doesn't seem the most likely. I find it hard to force your way to Madison and Akers unless you're just really trying to get different. But if you're going with Cousins, if you're going with the stack, obviously you're getting different enough with that. So I wouldn't go there. But Ben, if you want to go there,
no, I'm not
willing to hear the case.
I was trying to push that on you just so I could say maybe, but no, I'm not going there. I'm a little I think there's such a fluid situation, and I do like the pass catchers. I will say again, I think it's important context. Hawkinson in particular is getting some steam. He's north of 20% projected on OwnersBox, going to be very popular across the industry. And I'm okay with that. I think you can work around that, but I do think he will be a very popular one-off. And even with Cousins, last question, I know it's, spin the wheel, but I did catch Josh saying that Minnesota was one of his most popular defenses. Do you have any thoughts to that against Fields before we go to the Chicago side?
I get the logic for it. The weather, if you want to nickel and dime anything about this game, going to be supposedly a little bit rainy or a chance of rain, 15 to 20% wind. So there is a chance that this game could be a little more defensively minded. And Fields, we know, can give it away. I am kind of buying into the Fields renaissance. I don't know if I'm buying in enough this week in terms of the ownership. I have to make my final lineups here, but sim-wise was not getting forced there very much. So I might have to hand force in about 5% Fields. But I think that his pass game work being on the upswing, a little bit of an outlier effort in terms of the volume and all of that and the results they've been getting. But DJ Moore's been one of the best receivers in the league so far, just shy of a 1 EPA per target, which is usually impossible at this point of the season. But for him to be doing that, I think stands out. I'm willing to say that Fields is a better player. I get the logic in going to Minnesota's defense, but I think there are a few others that I would find more appealing.
I'm basically in line there. Listen, if you tell me that you think that Fields can make a couple of errors, it's a little nasty. I get it. I absolutely get it. But I want to talk about the Chicago side because, yeah, Justin Fields, I mean, eight passing touchdowns in 2 games. He's looked fantastic. DJ Moore is going out of control. Of course, they are going to be a popular connection today. And I kind of want to just start there. When you look at Fields, because I'm not getting a ton in the sims either, but I am going to force some in. And my bigger question isn't, do I want Fields? The answer is yes. It's, do I want the skinny stack with DJ Moore? Do I want to add Kmet? Or do I want to roll the dice with Mooney? Those are all topics I want to ask you about, but feel free to start with Fields and work your way down.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore this matchup against Minnesota. Minnesota on the year giving up a 0.11 EPA per dropback, 0.12 EPA per pass, 2 of the worst marks in the league. Also giving up an 87% catchable ball rate, which is actively the worst mark in the league. So for a guy like Fields who has a tough time completing balls, only a 62% catchable ball rate for him on the year, that could be a pretty big improvement on his usual outlay. So I think for Fields, like the pass game opportunity is there. It's just a question if DJ Moore can be this explosive. And I think that's sort of the thing you have to ask questions about. His air yards per target have been pretty solid on the year, just shy of 14, but only 7 targets a game. So you really need him to connect on these big plays to have the outlier day. So that makes it a little bit tough. But I think the whole thing that I've said this entire offseason was that if you're making a bet on Moore, you're making a bet on Fields, because any bet on Moore inherently is going to be a bet that Fields can be at least a league average passer. In this game, it's like if you're making a bet on Fields, you're making a bet that he has to put that pass game somewhere because he's just not running enough this year to have the outlier upside there. And if he's going to go anywhere, it's probably DJ Moore. So if I were to stack Fields, I think Moore is fine. Kmet, I think maybe a nice to have. His price tag's coming up a little bit, but not a must have. But I think Fields Moore stacks are going to be live for me pretty much every week, but especially when you see like a really good matchup like this one that should be, get a better opportunity than for Fields than he would have just normally as he is as a player.
Yeah, and I totally get it. I have no problem with that. I'm going to also have some. I am going to roll the dice with a couple Mooney shares. He was getting deep targets just at the same clip as DJ Moore. Slight difference, he didn't catch any of them, which registered a whopping 0 points in that last game, but he had ample opportunities. Yeah. Jordan Klein with the super chat from behind the glass. Which game today is a real slobber knocker? Oh, we're going to get to that, my friend. Don't worry about it. I see you. I didn't even know you were only here for 30 months, but we appreciate you running the show from behind the glass. Who is left? This is a genuine question. In the Bears backfield, everybody has been injured. Is there a playable guy there, or does this just say, you know what, maybe Fields pulls it down with a couple more designed runs?
I mean, Deonta Foreman would be the one you would think would get there. Certainly a guy that was popular in the best ball streets this offseason after getting, I believe, a $2 million contract to be on the Bears, but quickly lost his role to Khalil Herbert. And then also Roschon Johnson passed him over the course of the preseason, with Roschon looking a little better in the pass game, but also looking like a better sledgehammer back, a guy who's a better power back perhaps than Foreman is at this stage of his career. Those guys are out, though. Travis Homer also out for this game. So I think it's going to be Foreman and Darrington Evans, and even Blossom game is out, I think, right? So there's a third running back in there, but Foreman's the one that really matters. So if the Bears somehow have a positive game script, if they can get ahead, if they can keep this Minnesota pass offense from getting off the ground, I think Foreman can get there. Stochastic projecting Foreman for 9% ownership. Around the industry, though, I'm seeing Foreman at over 20, which does feel like you could be left holding a surprisingly chalky bag then. I don't know that he gets to 20, but it's kind of jarring to see him be projected over 20 elsewhere. So I think for Foreman, like, he's a solid play. But Ben, how do you feel about him as a price tag guy? Because I could see a lot of people just building Foreman, Chuba Hubbard backfields as their way to get different from Mostert or even Christian McCaffrey. And I don't know that I want to be aligned with that one because it's not the highest ceiling backfield.
I agree. It's not to say that I'm like, omitting these guys completely. I have no interest. And I do think it is site specific, because I will mention Foreman over on OwnersBox is only 4,200. He's projected for north of 20% there, and he's a really solid play. I like that spot quite a bit, but over on DraftKings, again, I'm not saying I'm not going to have him in the pool, but if he really does push, upper teens, low 20s or something like that, I'd be far more likely to pivot because I do think that the floor is still not that secure, and this game could go a lot of different directions. I don't think that's a spot for me. So for me to keep it simple to round out this game, and then we can move on. Fields to Moore is still my favorite option, even though it's probably the most obvious option on the Chicago side.
Yeah, I think that's where I am with it too. And I think, Foreman's okay, but I'd really be conscious of playing Foreman with a low owned stack, a low owned piece somewhere else, just because of the fact that there's a pretty wide breadth there for a 10% ownership projection from Stochastic, 20% plus elsewhere. I would like to make sure that he's not going to be part of a chalky build, just because I think if you are going to be putting him with Stafford stacks, you're probably going to be very duped right away. So I would just try to avoid that.
No doubt about it. All right, let's roll on. This is a fascinating game. The Seahawks, who are just secretly kind of doing their thing in the thick of it. They're not going to catch San Francisco probably, but they are doing some good stuff against Cincinnati, who is still hanging on 2-3 now, starting to get better. I think a lot of people saw that Burrow maybe is on the upswing here. It's a competitive spread, another, around a field goal. Let's start with Seattle. You've got Walker, of course, Geno, weapons on the outside going into Cincinnati. How does this team grade out for you? Who's popping up in your lineups?
So I'm really on the Seattle side, only getting Tyler Lockett so far. I could see the logic in Kenneth Walker, but with that price tag being so close to Mostert, I would rather have the sure thing in Mostert, I think. Obviously, Mostert, I guess the caveat for that would be Mostert is a guy with an injury history. If he's going to get bell cow work, maybe that does increase a little bit. If you see an in-game injury, I could certainly carve up the ownership that's going Mostert's way. But for me with Walker, it's 6% ownership I'm seeing on Stochastic, under 5% around the industry. I could see the game theory logic there, but I just don't love this matchup against Cincinnati. It's not a bad defense on the year. I guess the run would be a little bit easier to attack. Positive EPA allowed per rush at 0.02 there, per rush attempt going against Cincinnati's defense. And Walker's usage has been great. 4.8 red zone touches per game, 2 inside the 5-yard line per game. But I just don't think this matchup looks that more appealing. And we are with them coming off of bye, and the post-rookie bye week thing is a real thing over the course of time. So maybe JSN gets more involved, and that sort of hurts either Metcalf or Lockett a little bit more. Charbonnet could also get more involved, come for some more touches of Walkers. I think there are some risk points that I don't think matter that much, but I would still flag as kind of being important coming off of a bye. But Ben, I'm not getting much Seattle. Are you? Because this game is potentially, has some shootout potential.
Definitely has some shootout potential. I'm not. So the biggest problem I have with Seattle, it's not that I hate the plays, but you can give me any of their main skill position players, Walker, Lockett, Metcalf, and I have 2 or 3 pivots in the exact same price range that I just slightly prefer. And the ownership difference is not drastic. So it's not like, oh, that guy's 30% and, Lockett's 4%. Let me make the pivot to leverage. It's just choose best available. And I prefer Christian Kirk. We'll get to a million other players in similar ranges, but I am a little freaked out because this is a pretty appealing game. And I'm not sure I'm going to have anything really from Seattle, maybe a one-off share here or there, but I'm not getting to Geno stacks. You kind of broke down the situation with Kenneth Walker, healthy volume, but not really there. So I don't have anything else for Seattle if you don't.
Yeah, I just don't think these guys are the best price tag guys. One thing I will plant a flag for, and I think he's a guy that's just not coming up simulation-wise too much. DK Metcalf just quietly playing out of his mind. Best expected points added per target of his career right now, 0.74 per target. The volume has been down. He's getting under 6 targets per game, which is not great. Tyler Lockett getting 7, DK Metcalf getting 5.8. But DK Metcalf's going to have a run good at some point. He's actually been targeted less in the red zone than Lockett as well, getting just 1 red zone target per game compared to 1.8 for Lockett. Got to expect that to increase because, DK Metcalf's a big-bodied guy who historically has gotten a ton of end zone and red zone targets. This year, they haven't been there, but he's just been great this year. And I do think that he's a guy that at a certain point, I expect to get better for him. And maybe JSN being out there more would be a positive thing just to draw attention underneath. But Metcalf, not a key play for me this week, but at just 2% ownership, maybe 1%, I think taking a flyers on a guy who can theoretically break a slate, who's just probably due for run good, is one that might be worth a few shots.
So maybe we use him potentially as a run back because I have far more interest on the Bengals side of things. We saw, we'll get to Jamar Chase in a second, who said, I'll handle this. But Burrow, whether he's injured or not, the volume is there. Another 46 pass attempts against Arizona. They've had 2 straight road games. Now they're coming home. It seems like, I pretend to be a doctor on the show. Looking at him from the outside, it seems like it's not getting worse. If anything, he's improving a little bit. That means good things for the Bengals. Are you getting to the Burrow stacks? Jamar Chase has just been out of his mind, 19 targets in that last game. How are you formulating how you plan to attack Cincinnati?
So I am definitely getting a Burrow here. Chase and Mixon also looking like big parts of the sim portfolio as well, which I have no issue with. Obviously, the ownership on Chase gets a little bit onerous, but Mixon, I think, probably one of the best spots he's had all year against the Seattle defense, and in particular, really bad in the red zone. Giving up a 0.3 EPA per red zone rush is one of the worst marks in the league as well. And Mixon's been getting that usage, 4 red zone rushes per game for him, 1.2 inside the 5-yard line per game, 20 intended touches per game overall for Mixon. So I think that looks good. With Burrow, the thing that jumped out last week, there was one run play in particular where he took off for, I think, 15, 20 yards and probably looked the most mobile he has at any point this year, which I think is the main thing I would take as a sign. Like Chase having the outlier day, putting up 55 points. Obviously, with that concentration of targets without Higgins out there, that's a big thing as well. But Burrow's mobility was the part that I feel like was really missing from his game so far this year, because he was never, he's never been Josh Allen. He's never even been, I guess he's been kind of Patrick Mahomes adjacent in the run game, but he added a little bit of value with 4 to 5 rushes a game, sometimes a rushing TD, and having that off the table, I think made Burrow's ceiling a lot lower. So the fact that he can get out there, A, it's going to benefit the pass game because he can just move around the pocket a little bit more. But B, if he adds on, 20 to 30 rushing yards in this game, that gives him a chance to have an actual spike week at the position and maybe have one alongside Mixon and Chase. So I think Burrow stacks are on the menu, and I think Burrow, chalky this week, but chalky for a good reason.
Yeah, I mean, listen, those little infrequent rushes add up. So it's like a half a touchdown sometimes, even from guys that are just not mobile whatsoever. When you look to Burrow, you mentioned Mixon, who, yes, he may, people have reminded me because I'm a big Mixon backer. He is very dusty, but if you're going to give him 30 total touches, I don't really care. That's insane volume for him. But I want to ask more about the Burrow stack. Are you mostly focused on a skinny stack with him and Chase, who's going to be extremely popular? Or are you saying, Higgins, who's sporting a Q tag, Boyd, maybe some of these other type of guys can factor into my Cincinnati exposure?
So getting a little bit more Boyd than I would want. I certainly don't think he's the best play in the world, given that, we saw him last week, I think, put up about 12 points in a game with Higgins not out there. So Higgins being out there, even if he's out there as a kind of a decoy as he's been in the past, coming off the injured list, maybe that opens things up for Boyd a little bit more. I don't love it. I could see the logic and why the Sims are putting me there, but I think I'd rather focus in QBs +1, QBs +2 with Mixon and Chase, I think look good. And I do think it's worth considering some Higgins stacks. I think the issue with Higgins that, A, he's playing so poorly, but also I think his biggest success is probably putting up 19 fantasy points or so, and that hurts Chase enough that the Chase chalk doesn't get there. I don't know that he himself has 30 fantasy point upside, which is probably what you need on every Millie Maker winning slate this, in general this season. So I think there's game theory logic in Higgins, but not the strongest to actually play him. And certainly the tight ends, like Irv Smith, I thought had a shot to at least be what Hayden Hurst was last year for Cincinnati. And Irv Smith has been absolutely terrible, even by Irv Smith standards. So I think it's really, you get Tyler Boyd as a value, you go to Higgins as a game theory play, but really we know it's Chase and it's going to be Mixon. And those are the guys I think that make the most sense.
Yeah, poor Irv Smith catching a stray, but I get it. I thought he was going to be amazing in Minnesota, and it just did not happen. It's certainly not working here, but I'm with you. I'm certainly not going to let Chase beat me on this slate. I'm going to have some exposure. I'm not jamming him by any stretch, but he has slate breaking upside. We just saw that. I agree with the Higgins take as well. He might just kind of be more of a blocker than a play. I have nothing else for this game. Do you? I will mention again, no surprise, Burrow, Chase, some of the most popular plays across all the sites right now.
Yeah, and I think there are things in the betting markets too that look pretty good. Checking some of the probabilities for my startup probably, and basically there are a lot of outlier games that were coming up, or outlier alternate bar totals. So totals above 48, totals above 50 were there for this Bengals Seattle game. So I think the markets do have some belief this game could shoot out. So I don't mind forcing your way here, but obviously anything you do with Mixon and Chase, if you're going to those guys, you got to find a way to cut the ownership product with something else. And it's the best parts of this game are chalky and for good reason.
Absolutely. And I think it is site specific, and there's no better time for me. I know a lot of you guys already play there. I know some of you are probably building your lineups as we speak over on OwnersBox. But for new people, for people who have not yet signed up, I do want to mention what we've got going on with our friends at OwnersBox, who have the format with no defenses, no kickers, but with super flex. So you could say I want Burrow, but I also want Fields. I'm going to have 2 different stacks in my same lineup. And the best part about this, you're not flying blind. We have the tools to support this site. The sims that you've heard so much about, our ownership, our projections, it's all integrated into OwnersBox. So what do you get when you click that link below, when you sign up. Well, first of all, you're always going to be eligible for their bonus match deposit on your first deposit up to $500. It's a drip bonus. You put in 500, you'll be able to redeem that over time. Maybe you go less. It's totally up to you. But in addition from that, we're giving you a free week of our NFL Sims Max for all the sites, for OwnersBox, for DraftKings, for whatever you need, we've got you covered. So if you want to say, hey, I've been interested, I haven't signed up yet, I've been looking to kind of test out the tools and see what all the noise is about in the industry, it's the easiest way to do it. Come check it out. We're very confident that you're going to like it. And again, we're supporting you there. These contests, you're inclined, just put them on the screen. Could be some real dead money. If nothing else, reduced rake, but it could overlay pretty hard. Once again, that is the best money you can spend on a Sunday. So don't forget to put in your opportunities there and make sure you access your free week of the Sims Max once you do it. Shout out to OwnersBox for sponsoring the deeper dive. We move on. And Spags, I'm not going to lie, I'm a little relieved because I said some things on the Tuesday show that probably would have gotten me into trouble with this game. I said that I thought there was a world where Cleveland could have caused some real problems for the Niners, but with the caveat that they needed a quarterback, and they don't have one. And now I am relieved, absolved of my hot takes there. This is up to a 9.5 point spread, 36-point total. Let's start with the Niners. I assume you think there will be no problems, but what do you make of this matchup against a tough Cleveland defense?
Yeah, Cleveland's been really good on the year. I mean, great per pass, great per dropback, negative 0.26 EPA per dropback. I think just about the best mark in the league. Negative 0.31 EPA per pass. Again, same thing, one of the best marks in the league. Negative 0.32 EPA per rush, one of the best marks in the league for Cleveland's defense. So they're doing everything they can here. 32% stuffed run rate, 75% catchable ball rate. Like, they're limiting everything they can. So I think they've been pretty impressive. The issue is that they're going against the most outlier offense in football. So Sims wise, I'm getting nothing here, getting a little bit of a touch of Ayuk, a little bit of a touch of Deebo Samuel. But I think in terms of the game theory of the slate, in terms of what everybody's doing at running back, just playing Christian McCaffrey is probably a good move because nobody's going to be playing him. And there's a world where even in a tough matchup, like, he's probably not going to give you 200 yards in this game, but he can give you 3 touchdowns, and it could be those real, like, you got to earn it in the red zone kind of touchdowns. And that wouldn't shock me here. And if you do see a bust from, if not, all the guys in the certain price points we're going to talk about, at least, one of the guys gets through, you pair him with McCaffrey, most certainly be the one that I would target with that. I think that's certainly a way to get there. So I like McCaffrey as a tournament play. I think it's a really interesting play to go to a guy in a really ugly matchup. It's not like McCaffrey is going to be affected by, too many factors in the most part with how he's been playing, getting some short targets, great scheme that goes for him. So McCaffrey to me, Ben, I think is like a really live tournament play that people aren't going to. But I mean, do you feel like people will play McCaffrey? Because it's really obvious if you look at the ownership, it's like nobody's going to this one guy in this price point, which will make your entire team different if you just play him.
So this is kind of just how I personally treat it. I have this all the time with my lineups. I look and I'm like, okay, McCaffrey, I got to get some because this guy could have 3 touchdowns. He's just dominant. And I start to build. I'll get him on the next couple. The sim didn't get to him here. And then you look like, I didn't really get to him. It's just so, I sacrificed too much. I wanted to make sure I paid up for my stack. I wanted Hawkinson at tight end. I didn't have the room. And then you look at our tools, 6%. 6%, like Christian McCaffrey, the guy who is just a walking touchdown on the most prolific offense against a team that might not register points on the other side. So I am going to have to force some in just because there is no player I fear more that can end your slate with raw points than Christian McCaffrey, even in a tough matchup like this. I do think this isn't the easiest spot, but I am with you. I guess my question is, are you looking to just one-off McCaffrey, or does that make Purdy someone that's very viable for you?
Purdy can make some sense. I don't know that I love the matchup for him because it's just like, he's a guy that I think people who hate Purdy are too down on Purdy. They think that anybody could just walk out of a grocery store and be Brock Purdy. I don't think that's accurate. The people that love Brock Purdy think he's like an MVP candidate. And I don't think that's accurate either. I think he's just a guy that's really good as a vessel for, the great talent around him, as well as the coaching. That's some of the best in the league that he has. So I don't want to force him in really bad spots, but the price tag's okay. I think it's going to be hard enough to force my lineups to have McCaffrey that I don't want to force them to also take Brock Purdy with it. But again, the game theory of it, if this game just goes off, if the Niners are great as they are in pretty much every matchup, they could put up a lot of points still, and no matter what defense they're going against, and Purdy would rise with that tide. So I don't hate the concept, but I don't know if it's the play for me as much as just like pure McCaffrey is.
I tend to agree, and I do think Purdy's unbelievable at what he does. He's perfect for this team, but I do think at times it does make it a little difficult to get to him, particularly in a matchup like this against Cleveland's defense. Couple super chats that I want to get to. J-Ro, this one I certainly believe is for you. It says, please bring back the money hat. We got some requests from your people.
They're all behind me. They continue to sit up in the rafters like my championship jerseys, but I mean, I have one here. I'll put a hat on a hat briefly just for the sake of the people. But I feel like the bit, Ben, I don't know if you feel this way. Maybe you do with the doctor bit that I believe I forced upon you way back when.
Yeah, that was your fault.
It's like you become a tortured artist with your bits, and it's like, I don't want to be the guy who wears a money hat here. But as we know, as Ben knows probably very well from following betting for years, the guys who just do the same shtick from the 80s can just keep doing it over and over again. So I might be wrong about that and just have to always wear these hats and give in to the people fully.
So I think you're right. Like, I really should just give up and embrace them. But like, they're like, yeah, just, you change your Twitter handle, like put on a, you'll just be the guy every day, like wear a stethoscope. And I'm just like, no, I won't be doing that. I have some dignity, but I'd probably be on a private island if I did, because that certainly can really work. But appreciate you supporting the people. This kind of related, but Chad mentioned this, member for 5 months. It's a 2v2, and it is with the Niners defense, so it's a good time to get it. Stafford and the Bears defense, or Minshew and the Niners for tournaments.
Stafford and the Bears defense, Minshew and the Niners. Stafford's a really strong play this week. There are two guys that on the alternate markets have a very high chance of throwing over 1.5 touchdowns. Stafford's one of them. I think I would go Stafford and just suck it up on the Bears. But Niners D, like, certainly in a good spot. This is the lowest total of the week, so I can't begrudge either side, but I would probably go Stafford and Bears D.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with paying up for the Niners defense. I typically don't like to pay up for the chalky defense. Not that they're going to be crazy owned, but they're not going to be unpopular either. And that's kind of our last super chat, which, again, the best etiquette in the game for Goody always mentions it at the perfect time, that this is a very low total, but maybe there's still some opportunities in this game. We mentioned McCaffrey. Let's kind of keep it going with the guys on the outside. We saw Kittle explode, Ayuk and Debo. It's pick your poison with this team. Are you getting to any of these other Niners?
Yeah, just a little bit of Ayuk, a little bit of Debo. I think the salaries are probably what's pushing that in the Sims, just because these guys do have 40-point upside, or at least 30-point upside for both of them. And there's certainly ways as well to get away from McCaffrey. Like if you're not playing McCaffrey, those guys are going to inherently look more appealing, because if you're not playing McCaffrey, your lineup is telling the story of McCaffrey not having that 40-point day. And if he doesn't have that 40-point day, there's a better shot at one of those guys, again, giving you at least 20, maybe 30. But I just don't see it being a strong play here. The Browns are so good. I do expect Brock Purdy to have some issues on that front. To me, I think it's McCaffrey or bust, but you feel differently, Ben?
No, not really. I mean, again, I respect these guys talent-wise, just so many plays, even on an 11-game slate. I'm not trying to really hero call in a 36-point total, and I have no interest on the other side of this game. I can get that out of the way. If you can, this is an awful spot for Cleveland. They are, the Watson situation is not good for them. It renders everything very difficult. I don't have a single Brown share in my lineups.
Yeah, I don't foresee having any. You can talk me into playing one share of PJ Walker, Phillip Walker, whatever his name is currently on the sites, because XFL standout from the original XFL back when that was really a fun game, playing for the Houston Roughnecks, slinging it. Maybe there's a world where he can force the ball to Amari Cooper enough and kind of rise with Cooper getting there. David Njoku. Did you see the David Njoku burn photos, Ben?
I did. Njoku, I'm shocked that he was able to play. Respect to him. Yeah, wild.
He fell in a fire pit apparently, and is legit. Like, if you guys missed it, we saw the mask thing last week. It was like, oh, this guy wearing the mask, how silly. He legitimately got very burned. So the fact that he's able to get out there, like Ben mentioned, is incredibly impressive. But no, it's a 13-point total. This is the worst one. This has to be the worst one we've seen this year. I'm confident in that. This might be the worst one in the last 2 or 3 years.
It's really, really bad. And again, you're just like, you're not even getting a great price break. Awful situation. I'm sure the Browns' whole strategy is to get this game as slow and ugly as possible. That's the last thing they want to do, is get back and forth with the Niners. So we'll save some time and move it on. Again, if anyone has any questions, drop them in chat. We'll be happy to assist. The Saints and the Texans. The Texans are scrappy. If Loughy was here, I know he'd be riding for the Texans. So I will give them their shout out. Stroud and co have looked awesome. It's a competitive game here. Let's start with New Orleans, though. It's a team that Derek Carr, if he wasn't so scared, someone mentioned this to me, like if he wasn't so afraid of losing his job permanently, he probably wouldn't be playing, because he can't seem to throw the ball down the field when he's a little banged up. And then Kamara is just racking up crazy amounts of targets at various points. He had 14 in week 4. Obviously, that regressed a little bit. Where are the Saints falling for you? Are you getting to any Carr? Are you getting to any key playmakers for them?
I think Kamara looks really interesting to me. As a Houston defense on the year, not great defending running back passes, 0.25 EPA per target allowed there. So that's something where Kamara, as Ben mentioned, the workload did come down in the week 2 of Kamara playing last week. But I think that still Kamara, a very strong play at a salary range that, again, makes a lot of things work. But he is projected for about 20% ownership, stochastic wise, and around the industry. So I think getting too close to that would be nice. But if I'm at half that, I wouldn't feel that bad either. But Kamara, I think, is a strong play, just maybe not as strong as some others. Concern I have with Kamara is that Kendre Miller, I think, came on pretty strong in that first game, looked a little better in the past game. Obviously, eyeball test stuff, not in terms of the overall volume, but did get a little more success getting downfield. So I think Kendre, my concern, the reason I like Kendre a lot coming into the year, especially in best ball, was I thought that he was going to be able to carve out a role for himself. Him getting hurt to start the year, Jamal Williams being there also to start the year, kind of made it so he didn't get that big ramp up. But I think if he keeps playing like he did last week, he's going to start to chip away at that Alvin Kamara role every single week. For this week, though, I would still be willing to play more Kamara just because 4 red zone touches per game, 1 inside the 5-yard line per game, a Houston defense that I think the weak spot is the run game, or the run game defense, rather. I like Kamara, and then Michael Thomas coming up a lot for me just because of the price point, and I don't feel the most comfortable with that one. But Ben, are you getting a lot of Michael Thomas with the stochastic data?
I am getting a little bit. Certainly the guy that's being squeezed, and I'm not even, he's a good player, but I'm not uncomfortable, is Olave. Olave's in a kind of a tough no man's land for me. Much more competitive range in that next tier on OwnersBox on DraftKings, where that price point. Michael Thomas, you mentioned he's 4,900. Healthy amount of targets. He's had more than 6 or more in every game, hovering between basically 7 and 10. It's fine. He's got no touchdowns on the year, so we really haven't tapped into the ceiling. I think that's good. I don't have any Kamara, Michael Thomas together. But as a one-off from this game, even without the quarterbacks, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think Derek Carr stacks are kind of interesting here. Sim-wise, coming up about 8% of the time in the lineups that I built before the show. So, if the field's going to be at 4% Carr, if I get to 8, I don't hate that. Low ownership for Carr around the industry too. And if he takes Olave with him, Thomas with him, even Rashid Shaheed, I think looks pretty good. And I guess at tight end, there could be more opportunity too, because Juwan Johnson is out. So I don't know. Maybe this is the Taysom Hill game, Ben, that we can never predict.
It's I mean, me and Loughy talk about it on Tuesdays. This team is just one stupid play away from everything just being rendered nonsense, and Taysom Hill takes over and it changes the slate. So, if you're building 150 or something, you want to sprinkle that in. I do always think there's equity in that. it's really hard to know what you're getting. I think we see this in line. Favorite plays from New Orleans, Kamara and Michael Thomas.
Yeah, I think so. And Carr stacks, I would just say being agnostics, whatever you get in a Carr stack. But I think getting a little bit of him kind of interesting with the price tag and just the fact that he does have ceiling breaking receivers alongside of him.
On the other side, again, credit where credit is due. Houston has, I'm sure they're very, very happy with their selection in CJ Stroud. He's taking care of the ball. He's not making mistakes, 30 or more pass attempts in every game. They're very competitive here, and it's starting potentially to thin out, which is good for us in the sense that maybe not as many mouths to feed on the outside. It looks like Tank Dell's not going to pass protocol. Woods is sporting a Q tag, and I believe he's expected to play. Nico Collins and Schultz are there. Are you getting to Stroud? Are you getting to the pass catchers? And then talk about Pierce as well in that backfield.
Yeah, Pierce is a guy that I'm mostly down on. The price tag is now down enough that I could see the logic in getting there. But this is a New Orleans defense that historically has been pretty good against the run, still continues to be this year. Negative 0.11 EPA per rush allowed, negative 0.11 in the red zone as well, per rush allowed. So Pierce, he's not the outlier he was last year. He was avoiding a 33% tackle rate, or at a 33% rate. This year, he's at about a 12% avoided tackle rate. So a guy like Kenneth Walker was somebody I had some questions about coming into this year. He's taken a leap upwards. Dameon Pierce, I think, has stayed the same level, maybe gotten worse. So I don't want to go there. Stroud stacks, though, I could see the logic in. Robert Woods going to be, I think, decently chalky. I imagine I'll have about what the field's going to have there, maybe a little bit more. Dalton Schultz, I think, a nice tight end solution as well at 3,600. Not too much ownership, though some. Stroud stacks, I think, are in play. I don't feel the most comfortable about it in this matchup. I think this one skews a little bit more ugly. But Ben, are you getting to Stroud and Houston? Because they have shown the upside. I feel like I'm a little more matchup agnostic with them.
I'm not getting to a ton of the stack. Again, looking at our top stacks tool, they grade out fine, not bad. It's one of the lower average salary stacks, which makes sense. You're not breaking the bank to do it. I think I'm just a little more comfortable with one-offs, not stacking this game and having a Schultz, having a Nico Collins, something like that, just randomly, because I do think that the target share could be there. Even Woods, I'm fine with that. I wanted to ask you, are you looking to, you mentioned Powell earlier. Do you have any love for like a Mechie or someone at a very cheap price tag saying, okay, there might be targets up for grabs if Dell sits? Or do you think that's just a little too aggressive?
I think Mechie's interesting leverage if Woods is going to get any sort of ownership, because I do think that people will play Woods a little bit more just on the crush of routes he's been getting, the crush of snaps he's getting, actually playing more snaps per game than Nico Collins is. Robert Woods playing 53 compared to 50 for Nico, running slightly more routes as well, 29.4 compared to 28.4. So if Tank Dell was theoretically that blocker for Woods earning targets, then you could see Woods, I guess, get there. But Mechie, I think, kind of interesting at 3,100. So he is a guy that, like Ben mentioned, like Brandon Powell, opens up some opportunity to get different lineups in. And Mechie, I think, was really good at Bama. So I don't mind taking the flyer on what he's done so far. Obviously, ramping up from leukemia is a little bit tough. He's only playing 8.5 routes per game so far, but playing well with what he's gotten. So I don't hate the idea of Mechie, but Ben, I feel like all these guys, to me, if they're not Nico, I think they're all kind of the same play, and just that you're hoping that they can have an outlier day just because Tank Dell's not there.
That's where I struggle a little bit with this. It's not like there's just random, like some of these guys, I'm not saying play any of them. One of them could be inactive, but like Xavier Hutchinson is on this team. Noah Brown, like there are just random guys that could garner and cannibalize each other down there. One of them could get there. I think Mechie's probably the most likely of the extreme flyers, but I'm just not sure I really need that. Yeah, Nico Collins. And I do really like Schultz at tight end. I know it's a little crowded in that range. We'll get to Ertz. We talked about Pitts already, and there's a couple others, but he's been catching touchdowns. Stroud feels comfortable with them, and they can move the ball. This is a very competitive game at home. I even have a little Texans defense. I know defense is kind of random, but I'm okay with some Texans defense just because I think Carr at times really, really is limited out there.
Yeah, Carr, the accuracy issues, I think not quite playing well downfield like the hope would be for coming in New Orleans. So Texans D, well coached. I think that's the main thing for him. Some talent getting there, but this game is just one. I feel like it's hard to kind of get the read on it. Like I'm going to play some guys from this game, but I don't expect it to put up 60 points or anything. So I feel like there's a good shot here if you're playing a lot of guys from this game. Like, don't be surprised if it does end up a little more just like Alvin Kamara, Damian Pierce trading inefficient runs back and forth.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, this could be an ugly game, no doubt. All right. We're about halfway home, and we're about halfway to 1,000 likes. Not bad. Again, I know I'm not lofty, but we'll see what we can do. Let's see. We definitely are going to clear 500. Even I, the pessimist, know that we're going to do that. We'll see how high we can go. It is appreciated, you guys. I know we got a lot of people watching. Let's get to, normally this would be the most exciting game of the week for us. Spags, you will forever be you've got it solidified in my mind. Anthony Richardson, that's your guy. You were first to that. It's not here. It's Gardner Minshew. I know that's upsetting, but we still have to talk about the Colts. And they actually, on multiple sites, on OwnersBox and DraftKings, I'm seeing some love for Minshew out there. Are you seeing that? How do you break down this Colts offense?
I think this Jacksonville defense is good enough that I've been kind of quietly avoiding them every week. And now this week against Minshew, Minshew's fine. And it is a revenge game. I know the chat always loves a good revenge game. So keep that in mind. He's coming back to Jacksonville. He's going to come back as a conquering hero. But I just don't think Minshew's that good. I think that's what kind of stood out to me throughout the preseason, throughout the game so far. Minshew's playing well. He's a good game manager QB. He's not as explosive. And I think too, people might fall into a Josh Downs trap this week. I wouldn't say trap fully, but a lot of his success last week came when AR was still in the game. Then Minshew came in and was peppering Pippen a little bit more targets. So I think people might be misunderstanding that one. That said, with the price point of Minshew, are you going to play Phillip Walker, PJ Walker at 4K? You're going to play Minshew at 5K. You're going to play the guy with actually a sustainable team total of 20 implied points on Indianapolis. So I get the logic in playing him. I'll probably play a little bit begrudgingly. I guess I'll play a little bit. But I think it, to me, feels a little bit of a trappy spot. I feel like Minshew is kind of due for a down game. And Jacksonville's just good enough that I don't know that Minshew is going to even hang in this one. But Ben, are you playing Minshew? Are you buying into the old Minshew mania?
I'm not buying into Minshew mania. I do think that I'm interested in some of the Colts pass catchers. And for that reason, there is a chance that I get, I'd say, a light amount of Minshew stacks. But I really wanted to ask you, about Pittman and Downs specifically, because even if you don't like Minshew, are these guys maybe one-offs or if you're getting to Lawrence, who seems to grade out pretty well, that they're the run back that you want in this game?
I think so. I think that Pittman and Downs are live for different configurations. Kyle and Granson too wouldn't play a lot of him, but I think he's also vaguely in play as a tight end play under 3K. But Pittman, I think, would be the most interesting to me. The ownership, it looks like for Downs and Pittman, going to be pretty well represented. So I don't know if they're going to be big stands for me, but I think both guys can get there. Downs has been great, I think, so far this year relative to his opportunities. Certainly, Pittman is getting a lot of opportunities. 9.4 targets per game is a pretty good sign for him, and I do expect her to be more as Minshew does get there. So I think Pittman and Downs are fine as one-offs. They also look fine as a double stack if you are going to play Minshew. But I think as one-offs, they probably have the most utility. I just worry that they might get a little too cozy ownership-wise for people and price tag-wise. And if Downs is at 20%, I think that's a bad play. If Downs is at 10%, I don't have any issue getting to 10 to 20.
Yeah, and again, that's where I can't recommend our stuff more about if you're wondering that stuff. That's the great way, whether you're doing it through OwnersBox and signing up and getting the free week, or you just want to buy one of our packages. That's the type of stuff that can really make those decision points that much easier, because it's true. Everyone at a certain ownership becomes maybe something I'm getting underweight, and I'll take a shot if the guy's 2% owned. And Downs is someone I do think is a little dependent because he's a great pay down option, but I think everyone is starting to see that on this slate. And with the love on the other side for Jacksonville, it makes that ownership even higher because people want the run backs. So let's talk about Trevor Lawrence. He's in that mid-range price point for kind of quarterbacks, but he's grading out as one of the better stacks today. You've got Ridley, you've got Kirk, you've got Ingram, you've got ETN, you've got weapons everywhere. Are you getting to Lawrence? Is he one of your key plays today?
Wouldn't say he's a key play, but I do
Okay.
think he's an interesting play to get some of. The Fields is going to be there so much. Again, like over 10% ownership projected on Stochastic for Lawrence, a little bit over 12%. I'm looking across the industry, seeing that number. So I think that my issue with Lawrence is a personal one where I just don't think I have a personal beef with Trevor Lawrence, and I want to finally air it out. Those cheekbones, Ben, been bothering me.
The airing of grievances. That's what we're here for.
No, I just think that people view him a little more highly than I do, and I think he's been not playing great this year, rounding a little bit more into form, but still a negative EPA per pass guy, negative EPA per drop back guy. Like, he's not taking the leap that everybody thought he would. And as a result, every time there's like an okay spot, people are going, Trevor Lawrence, got to play him. Indianapolis gives up the most explosive plays in the pass game. Got to play Trevor Lawrence. And I don't know that I disagree, but I just don't want to play him as much as the field. So that's where I am with it. But a good spot for Ridley because of that explosive plays thing. Good spot for Christian Kirk as well. No Zay Jones. Once again, Zay Jones is the part that really chips away at Christian Kirk's role. Evan Ingram, I know Josh is on him at tight end. Certainly a very chalky play this week, but one that I think is worth getting exposure to. So unfortunately, I think I'll get these guys with some Lawrence, but I think as one-offs too. ATN, like all these guys are firmly playable this week, and a fairly concentrated offense with those guys. You know who they are, and who they're going to be in if they are going to have an outlier day.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these situations. I think a lot of them really grade out nicely, and the field also believes that when you're looking at ownership across these sites. Christian Kirk, ETN, Ingram, these guys are not going to be unowned by any stretch. They're going to be popular. It doesn't mean you can't play them. Doesn't mean that I don't have interest, but I do think you got to be aware of that. The guy that I'm probably most interested in, though, I think that Calvin Ridley might be getting a little lost just because of the price point. I have nothing to knock Christian Kirk, and I mean, listen, Evan Ingram, I've been playing him. If he's getting 8 targets, I used to play him when he was getting no targets, so I get it. But I feel like Ridley maybe is that guy who I still believe has the ceiling, who can really garner target share. And in this matchup, I'm going to probably make it a priority to get some healthy exposure to Calvin Ridley today.
Yeah, Ridley was not coming up a lot sim-wise, which, is sort of the game theory of it, where if the sims are telling you one thing, obviously that's an important tell. But then also if the sims are pushing people towards Kirk, pushing people towards Ingram, pushing people towards ATN, that you can probably get some leverage on the people who are using the same products as you by playing a Ridley. And I do think, like Ben said, definitely a nice spot for Ridley. The usage has been there, 1.4 red zone targets per game, 15 air yards per target. So he is getting targeted downfield. We know he has big play upside. And we also know too that he can probably, if he concentrates targets his way, like Christian Kirk doesn't get there, Ingram doesn't get there potentially. So I think there's a world where Ridley can be the one guy who gets there in this offense. Even ATN's workload, he's the one running back in football. It's actually consolidating his backfield the positive way for him after getting some touches back from Bigsby and Dearness Johnson and Hasty and all those guys. And I think that going to Ridley is the way to completely blow up a Jag stack. So I'm with you on that. Like, I think he's a really interesting play if he's going to be under 10% owned.
We had a question, and we also had a super chat, which we'll get to in the next game in just a second. But Chris Kennedy said, what does game theory say about going cheap at quarterback and punting running back twice that allows you to play 3 stud wide receivers? I mean, to me, that's a viable strategy. You just want to make sure, if you're the way I look at it, Spags, if you do something that only has a couple of permutations salary wise, you ironically didn't leverage, because if it's like, all right, I'm just going to click the top 3 wide receivers, everybody that goes Foreman and Hubbard are probably joining you with that kind of permutation.
Yeah, I would think there'll probably be a lot of Minshew plus Downs plus Foreman plus Hubbard that allows everybody to pay up for Hawkinson and 3 stud receivers would be my guess, maybe one of the running backs. But I think that's probably a very popular configuration. So you have to find another way to get different if you were to make that your base.
Yeah, I think building off that and then maybe going, a lot of times what I try to do, this is just me, whether I'm using our sims or whatnot, I'll try to build, a cash optimal, what I would view as the optimal lineup. Then I'll start 3v3ing it. I'll start 2v2ing it. I'll remove the and start building off of it to make it more and more aggressive for larger field tournaments. So I think that's a good way to go about it. You just want to make sure you have that path to success. First and last, I guess. This is a 14.5-point spread because the Giants mercifully aren't on the slate. Carolina and Miami, a healthy total. Carolina, I believe they don't have their pick, right? That the Bears have it.
I believe that's the case. Yeah.
Okay. So they don't even, it's just sad. Bryce Young probably should be watching, but he's not, and he's doing the best he can, and it's not good. We can probably get this out of the way. Thielen has been awesome, but are you getting to any Bryce Young today?
No, I don't see the reason to go there in this matchup. I guess the one thing you could say is that he might be throwing from the jump, which is a possibility, and that's certainly a positive thing. But honestly, him dropping back to pass, I actually don't know if it's a positive thing because he has no pocket awareness, too small. He wasn't ready for prime time, and I really thought he'd be able to come in right away and be a good system QB because that's kind of what he was at Bama. And I think coming in here, it might be the system too. Like it is a lot of check down heavy stuff, but Bryce to me looks like the least ready of all the rookie QBs we've seen so far.
It's a tough sell. Yeah, it is. And the weapons, they're not the worst, but they're not the best. I want to ask you about 2 specific weapons. Certainly Adam Thielen. I mean, what is going on? He has 35 targets in the last 3 weeks. He had another 11 for 107 and 1 last week in a loss to Detroit. He's 5,900, reasonably priced on OwnersBox as well. Are you going to Thielen and say, garbage time can get him there? Or is this like, okay, it's starting to be priced to the premium and I'm going to not chase that?
So my concern with Thielen, and right now I'm projecting to play about 10% of them, and I don't mind the play on its face. The part that I worry about, so we haven't projected for 13% ownership at Stochastic. Around the industry seeing about 14, 13-ish. So I think that's there. I think the field's going to jam Thielen a lot more because I think the field has always had a predisposition to Thielen. And again, I know this because I've been doing best ball streams since February. Like casual players go like, Thielen's so great. Sharp players go like, Thielen, this old dust ball, he's not going to get there. And I think in the reality, the truth is somewhere in the middle. The issue, though, is that Thielen's still under 6K, and he's now had multiple 20-plus point weeks, 30-plus point weeks. So I think he's going to be closer to 20% owned, to be my guess. And if that's the case, like I don't want to flip the cards and go in playing a certain amount, assuming he's going to be 13, and then he ends up 20 to 25. But I think he will be, is going to be my guess. I don't know, Ben, if you feel the same way, where I trust the ownership projections first and foremost, but sometimes like the data doesn't say this guy is going to, go into this place. And I think the casuals sometimes drive those guys more. And I think to me, if there were one guy I was going to say ownership is wrong on, I think Thielen comes in like about 2x ownership.
Yeah. And that could be, so I always try to think about, I do this a lot with PGA, but I think even more in NFL with the ownership, it's like, okay, how many people want to just play Thielen? I think there's a pretty healthy amount. But then there's a subsection that don't even want to play Thielen, but they want Tua stacks. They want Miami exposure. And then they're saying, all right, well, let me get Chuba or Thielen. And they get extra ownership just because of the game environment. I do think that factors in a little bit. And it kind of brings me to Hubbard in that backfield. I mean, this is a guy that he's also projecting to be pretty popular. He should be busy. Maybe he can garner some target share and get some easy dump offs. He probably needs that because the touchdown equity, I think, is relatively low in this offense. Are you looking to pay down for him at running back? And if you are, do you have him ahead of a guy like Foreman? Because I think that's going to be an important decision point for a lot of people.
I think on DraftKings, I'd put him ahead of Foreman. I would probably put Foreman ahead of Chuba on FanDuel because of the touchdown dependency there. But on a pure PPR site like DraftKings, I think I'd probably go to Chuba a little bit more. I mean, Chuba's going to be highly owned. Stochastic has him at 16. He's upwards of 25 in other parts of the industry. I think that Chuba's a solid play, though. He's been quietly better than Miles Sanders on the year. 17% avoided tackle rate compared to 8% for Miles Sanders. Getting targeted per route, similar amounts for both guys. Chuba also getting more red zone touches per game than Miles Sanders has been getting. So I think Chuba is actually a very solid play. I would personally say that I think I prefer him as a bring back if you want to force that in to Thielen just because of the potential ownership. But I feel like Chuba's solid. It's just, is it likely that Chuba wins a million maker? I don't know that it's the most likely because you do have all these guys in that 6K range that look good. And also McCaffrey lurking as a low owned pivot. But I feel like Chuba's a solid play, Ben, unless there's something you think I'm missing.
No, I definitely think he fits. Again, you don't see the opportunity cost at running back. Rarely to me do you see guys in the low, the 4K range that are playable. That's just because it's a volume opportunity. You can't just with a receiver, you can say, okay, he's going to get 3 targets, but one goes for 60 yards. I'm in business. If the guy's going to get 4 carries, it's not that simple to be like, oh, I'll just play him. But this is an opportunity. I think you can go there. Not saying he's my favorite play, but he is involved for me. But let's flip it to Miami because clearly they are going to be one of the teams that most people are going to want to get to. And we'll start hitting on these questions. Andrew Williams, really appreciate the super chat. Who's the backup running back for Miami today? So we can start in the backfield. We know that Mostert now really should be busy. Is there that guy, though, that you think plays maybe that complementary role to him? Or do you think the dynamics change for Miami as a whole?
I think the dynamics change. Savon Ahmed would be the guy that I expect to be the true backup. Chris Brooks should also be in the mix, but neither should get to Achane level touches, you would think, with Jeff Wilson out this week. I think if Wilson were playing, maybe he would get to 10 or so. But I think both those guys, to me, Ahmed feels like a 5-touch guy, maybe 5 to 8, and Brooks probably less than 3 would be my guess. But I think it's just a Mostert backfield. I am firmly in on Mostert. I worry about it because whenever there's this guy that's like too obvious, big red flashing lights to play Raheem Mostert, I think that is usually a player that I'm, would try to get away from a little bit more if I'm playing the pure game theory of it. But I just don't know how Mostert fails. He's been so great. He's been so efficient. He's been as good as Achane, maybe a little bit less good, honestly, but they'll break in the long plays. But we know he can do similar stuff. And we also know that Miami should be in the red zone a lot. Raheem Mostert, 3 red zone touches per game, 1 inside the 5-yard line per game. Could theoretically carve away Achane's vacated touches as well for that spot. So he can maybe get to like 5 red zone touches in this game, which would not be shocking at all. I think Mostert, Ben, is like the smash play of the slate. And I don't think I'd want to do anything different, but are you going to get away from the ownership or are you going to lean in?
I'm going to lean in. And Zach Pinnell just mentioned, member for 11 months. He said 70% Mostert and 20 max too much. I mean, I think that's more of a risk tolerance question. I think you could make an argument that you could lock them. And that, with football, you could get bageled by doing that. There's no doubt about it. But to me, Mostert objectively is the best play on the slate. He's going to be probably the most popular play on the slate, but I think it's warranted. He can get there in so many different ways. Obviously, he could fall in the end zone a couple times and you're there. Even if he doesn't, he can still get there because he should just be so busy. They should run up and down this team. He can catch the ball a little bit. And I think the thing to kind of get to Goody's super chat, which is kind of that same concept, he's not as premium as some of these opportunities that we see, Spags, where it's a super popular play, but he's 8,300 and it's like he needs the game. This guy, I mean, he's 6,400. A touchdown's probably going to do it. You don't need McCaffrey-like output to really pay off at a pricey tag here. So I'm very comfortable with Mostert today. I'm going to try to leverage, but it's not going to be with him.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think I'll have probably 75% Mostert overall. And I feel like uncomfortable about that because we've seen that blow up. But like, again, you go back at some of these spots. It's like, Ben, if we're going to grade like Mostert versus Jamal Williams, Mostert versus Josh Kelly, Mostert versus these guys have been the chalk. Like Mostert is unequivocally a 10 times better play relative to Vegas total, relative to matchup. My cat's so excited. She's walking behind me right now.
She's like,
play Raheem Mostert. Go ahead.
Nature show.
But I think that this spot is one of the best spots we've seen all year. And I think the way maybe you can cut ownership is going to a stack with Tyreek or Waddle, maybe even Durham Smythe, I guess, or, play 2 of those guys. There's ways to chop this up, but I would not make Mostert the part that I'm running away from.
Are you okay with getting Mostert with a Waddle or a Tyreek in the lineup without Tua? Like just saying, I'm going to take 2 big pieces of Miami, but it's not my stack.
I think that's fine. I mean, I think there's still a logic in going to Tua in particular. I think on OwnersBox looks great. Getting about 28% of him there, which would make him the second highest owned QB relative to the Sims. So I think that feels pretty good. But I think Tua can throw 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns to Tyreek, or 2 to Tyreek, 1 to Waddle, maybe 1 to Smythe. And then we see Mostert run into and that's just the Vegas total. Like that's just the 30.8 implied points. It doesn't include if Miami somehow puts up 50 here, which I think is still in the range of outcomes. So I think you could safely play multiple configurations of these guys and not feel bad about it. And I do think going to Mostert and Tyreek, let alone Mostert, Tyreek, and Tua, that's one way to get different and to cut that ownership product down enough while still leaning in on the highest total game on the slate.
Yeah, this is a game. Listen, this is a team. It's really, I'm not going to push back on almost any exposure iteration you want to get to them, whether it's the Tua stack. Certainly on OwnersBox, that's going to be one of the stacks I look to do for one of my 2 quarterbacks. I think that it's a very interesting piece there. Waddle, he still had 10 targets. Like I know he wasn't massively involved, not racking up Tyreek points. He had 10 targets. A lot to go around on a team that's hung 70. All right. We got 4 games left. We got 20. We're in perfect position. We're going to be just fine because New England, Spags, is it a hot take to say they're the worst team in the league?
I think it's a bit of a hot take, but
they're the worst team in the league. Worst team in the history of the league. Just awful.
It's tough. I mean, if you're to the point where New England people want to fire Bill Belichick, you're probably not doing that well. But I'm surprised because I really thought just moving to Bill O'Brien for Matt Patricia would be enough to say, here's a real guy. Like Matt Patricia's basically a Nepo baby who got the job last year. This year, it's like Bill O'Brien. And he's coming from Bama, coming from taking some time to learn different offenses. And it's even worse this year. And I don't know how that's possible, but not a lot of talent, not a lot of athleticism, and not a great QB. And I don't know. I don't love anything about New England.
Yeah, does that include Ramondre Stevenson, who certainly has not paid off, whether you're talking best ball or any format right now? It has just been rough going. They're in the Browns territory. I'm not sure I'm going to have a single share of a Patriot today.
So Devontae Parker comes up as a value at 3,500, and he also is coming up for me on OwnersBox a good amount. So I guess that's the one play that sort of stands out. No Juju this week. There's somebody else out for New England, right, in receiving?
We got Juju. Douglas.
Douglas is out, right? Yeah. Because then, we're getting Tyquan Thornton back and losing those guys. Yep. There's theoretical opportunity for Kendrick Bourne and Devontae Parker. Like Mac Jones has been dropping back a lot when he's still hanging in the game. Vegas's defense is not that good, not giving up a ton of explosive plays, but maybe starting to look a little better. Like there's a world where I think you can make a New England stack work. Again, Bourne and Parker in particular standing out. Hunter Henry, I know people still like, not getting a lot of him sim wise, but I still think he's the same play he's been the last month. It's just he's going to have down weeks when this offense completely goes to crap. The best case for New England is just that the Raiders are an average team, and also New England, Josh McDaniels, they know each other mutually about as well as anybody. But I just you got to really hold your nose if you're going to play it. And I don't want to play Devontae Parker as much as the Sims are telling me to play Devontae Parker.
Yeah, I don't like this team. I do think the most interesting thing about New England right now, and it's not actionable, is what is Malik Cunningham ultimately going to do for this team? Because he would provide a completely different look. And I think we're going to find that out sooner rather than later. Because he can really do some things for them, but it's not helpful here. What is helpful is figuring out what to do with Josh Jacobs, because he is all over the Sims tool. He is popping up when I was playing around with OwnersBox lineups before the show. I was playing around with DraftKings lineups before the show. He is all over this slate. Josh McDaniels cost me an arm and a leg on the Monday slate. I'll complain just for a second. I needed Jacobs to get that last carry. He did not. He still had 20 carries in that game. He had 5 targets in that game. Do you like Jacobs? Are you a little worried about the situation? What are you doing with one of the most important pieces of the slate?
So getting a lot of him on the Sims, and this is one where I think I am going to, and I hate fully just going you know what, Sims, I know better than you and your 40,000 trials going, but I just don't want to play Josh Jacobs in this spot. I don't know why it's coming up that much. I get the price point. 7K is low for Josh Jacobs. He's getting 23 intended touches per game. That's a lot. 4.2 red zone touches, 1.4 inside the 5-yard line. But again, we just saw this matchup gobble up Tony Pollard, and that was in a positive game script where the Cowboys had that game safely in hand. So I guess the one thing you could say is sometimes in ugly games, running backs leaning on them a little bit more. Devontae Adams, borderline a decoy last week. But I just do not I'd rather play Mostert. I'd rather play Chuba. I'd rather play Mixon. I don't know. Ben, are you on Josh Jacobs? Because this has been one thing where I just don't get it. I get it on a meta level, but like functionally, I just don't see how this is a game where like Jacobs gives you 30.
Yeah, so I'm getting a healthy amount just by default. I'm with you, and I want to just say this very quickly. That's what I love about our tools with these sim tools or the data or whatever. We give you the ability to boost what you want. It's not like, if I use this tool, I have no ability to make decisions. That's not it at all. You can just blindly trust them. And certainly I really believe in what they're doing. They're running those simulations and giving you a lot of vital data. But if you say, you know what, I want to, I don't want as much exposure to Josh Jacobs, it's a very simple process to boost him down, and the lineups will reflect that. And you certainly can live with the outcomes based off that. I love that ability. So I'm probably right now in the 25% range with a guy like Jacobs. Nothing crazy. I don't want him to define the slate. I'll say this, and I think you would agree, he is not in the Mostert territory for me. I have them very different in terms of my exposures. I trust Mostert infinitely more than I trust Jacobs.
Yeah, I would agree fully. Jacobs, a pure projection play that, sometimes can really pay off if people are going to ignore that guy. But if the field is going to be on Jacobs 20%, 25%, I think there's some fungibility to that, Ben. I don't know if you feel the same way, but like we talked about potentially Thielen being on the higher end. I feel like Jacobs is one of those plays that everybody's going to feel like we do, where it's like, I don't know about this. And if he ends up coming in at 10%, then it's like, fuck, he actually was a good play. And it's a little bit scary.
It's definitely scary. And that's why I want to make sure, like I said, I'm going to make sure I have some Josh Jacobs, but I want an out that if he has a middling opportunity or result today, that I'm not completely torched, because I do think there's some of that. Last thing for the Raiders, you've got alphas on the outside. Where are you getting with their pass catchers?
I think that it's interesting to go to Davante Adams here if we are expecting some ownership, and I do project to currently have about 15 to 20% Davante Adams, and I think that's pretty good. Some concerns with how he played, honestly, the last 2 weeks, where Monday night, obviously, like a lot of people on that showdown was heavily invested in Davante, and I just feel like his energy is not there as much. I know people are like, the shoulder is what's limiting him, but it feels like since he gave that quote about, I don't know that I want to be on a team going nowhere, now the motivation is like he's not running as hard, and Jacoby Myers is out there running and playing like Jimmy G wants him to play, getting open, getting into space. So I worry about Adams, but I do think for this week with Jamar Chase being so chalky, like I think you got to go to Davante Adams just in the hopes of getting leverage there. And you can possibly, if Jacobs is highly owned, you might get leverage on Chase and on Jacobs if Adams has an outlier day. So I think that's a pretty smart game theory play. But the eye test for me is just like, I don't think his heart's in it right now. I don't think he wants to be on this team. And that's not a data point. That's me. It's just somebody watching it. But I do think that it's a point of concern for me.
Yeah, it's a big opportunity cost. That's my biggest worry, is that like you're sacrificing a potential big time salary allocation elsewhere. So I'm not running away from it, but Jacob's probably the most important piece for this game. Honestly, for me, give people just, if you like a little wagering, you haven't been over to OddsShop or YouTube, check that out as well, because I do like the Raiders in this game. There's 2.5 out there. I know it seems like a little almost like double trappy, but I just think the Raiders handle them. I have no confidence, unless New England's going to scheme something differently, that they can do much of anything. And it honestly, with 3 games left, it's the perfect time. I do want to mention, I know we've got thousands of people in here, and it would be really weird if all of you were in just these 6 states. So I know for some of you, this is not going to be applicable. But if I name your state right now, I got a little money for you. And those states would be New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, Iowa, Colorado, and welcome to the club, Kentucky. What do they have in common? Bet365 is in their state. And what does that mean? It means that Bet365 is giving you some money for signing up there. The link is below. All you have to do is sign up. Bet $5. Maybe bet on the Raiders, because I really do think they cover. If they win, you're going to get 150 in bonus bets. If they lose, you're going to get 150 in bonus bets. It is that simple. In Kentucky, it's 1 into 365. That's just outrageous. But for those other states, you have the opportunity to really pad the bankroll, add some money. You can do whatever you want with it. Bet parlays, do something crazy, or maybe hedge against your DFS lineups. Again, it never hurts to have that extra bankroll. And Bet365 has been in the business forever. A great book, one I wish sadly was in New York. No dice. You got to be 21 plus. Only 18 in Kentucky. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. 3 games left.
Wait, before we go to that, Ben,
oh,
we got some time to fill here, right?
Yeah.
So, Jordan, can we pull up the image of Ben again?
Oh, dear God. That's what we're going back for? What are we doing here?
Because like Ben, I feel like you're a very credible guy. That's part of why we did the doctor branding. I would like to see the image again, because I feel like there's never been more of a time where Ben Rasa has looked like a pornographer than this particular.
That's like, you haven't seen my other video work, obviously, but yeah, I mean, the backstory on these photos, I got duped. I don't even remember who it was. Somebody asked it. Honestly, it was like the George Costanza for the Seinfeld fans. Like, they just told me to send in a bunch of pictures. I had no idea what they were. And now they're plastered all over these graphics. They got me thinking. They've got me pointing. It's very disturbing. And I don't know how to get into the back end of our Slack to delete all of them. So we're just stuck with me promoting these. Yeah, like look what they've did to us, Spags. Look at
the one with Eric is the best, where he looks like a cloud, or he's like,
it's just, like, what? I mean, what can we do? I will say, I'm glad it's attached to Bet365 because it's a worthwhile deal, but it's highly disturbing.
It's the stare too. It's like the squinty eyes, like real Terry Richardson vibes coming off.
There's a lot going on. I mean, people are, I do everything. I went outside yesterday and filmed a little short in the college betting streets. People were shocked that I left. It's always something.
I've seen you do your little walking around videos.
Yeah,
like, hey, I'm a man about town. I've got to film this.
Everyone's like, oh, it's a green screen. Yeah, that's what it. Let's not get crazy, people.
That's how much you don't touch grass that you have a green screen to show.
Yeah, that's what I did. I got a green screen in the apartment complex here, but you can always check that out. Jazzraz DFS at Chris Spags. 2 great follows on Twitter for you right there. Talk to me about these Lions. They are for real. They're a good team, but this is a tough matchup. Tampa's no joke. It's a 3-point spread. St. Brown to me is getting a little lost. Montgomery was crazy chalk last week. Goff has been good. What are you seeing for the Lions this week?
Not getting a lot sim-wise. I do agree that this game just feels like kind of a forgotten piece. Even David Montgomery, who's been the belle of the ball with Jahmyr Gibbs on the sideline, and in general, just the usage he's been getting in the red zone, 6.3 red zone carries or touches per game, 2 inside the 5-yard line per game. People not going there against this Bucs defense that historically we all know does stop the run pretty well. But obviously, that much volume, that much red zone opportunity, it doesn't even matter if you stop the run at that point. So I think Montgomery is interesting, but 16% ownership for the field, seeing the same thing across the industry as well, only getting 8% of them from the Sims. So I think if you were, and this might change for me if I take out Jacobs or really knock Jacobs down, I think Montgomery's an interesting play here, and Amon-Ra too. Like, these guys, I think, portend well in a matchup that should be a little more defensive. So you could see more PPR points for Amon-Ra. You could still see Montgomery again getting that same touchdown equity he's had historically. But this game, the totals are pretty low. Nothing in the alternate markets that made me feel like, oh, it's going to really shoot out. So I get why the field's not going to be here, but because the field's not here and we have seen great performances from both sides here, I think it's probably worth looking at a little bit more, but I just haven't done it yet.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's not a game that I'm like, oh, I don't like the spot at all. It hasn't really come up too much because I'm not getting to a lot of Baker. I'm not getting to Goff. Laporta looks like he's going to give it a go, but I'm a little scared to go there. So that maybe renders a little more target share to a guy like St. Brown. Montgomery is certainly not in the spot that he was last week. So for me with the Lions, I kind of want to force a little in because right now I don't have much and I still respect the team. They've been more than willing to play their role in some up and down games, but I don't really have this is the guy for me on the Lions because I think Laporta sporting the Q tag is scary, and Montgomery and St. Brown I think are pretty efficient price wise.
Yeah, Laporta too, coming up to 5,600 on DK. Like, that's a pretty tough price tag to go to. And then, yeah, have enough of a chop there with Amon-Ra coming back in. That Reynolds makes less sense. Khalif Raymond, obviously not going to go back there. Jameson Williams, I don't know what the deal is with that at this point. It's just nothing to love here, but because there's nothing to love, I do think that Montgomery and Amon-Ra in particular, interesting tournament plays just to throw in and maybe cut your ownership a little bit from some of the chalkier plays we talked about.
On the other side, you've got Godwin and Evans. You've got White in that backfield. These are guys that I think are actually interesting tournament plays. They can do their part in this game. Again, pretty healthy team total for both of these squads, with or without Baker. Are you getting to any Tampa players, and who specifically popped up?
So I am getting some stacks here. Evans, I think, looks good. Godwin would have looked a lot better if Evans were out. There is the risk point with Evans, though. Did have the hamstring injury reoccur, was out of practice for the most part this week, and then was limited, and now he's going to give it a go. That's the one thing that scares me off, but I do think Evans will be my highest played player on the Tampa Bay side here. And actually, I think my highest played player in the game, unless I really move things around. So I get it with Evans, boom bust guy, can get downfield on the year. Detroit, not great defending the deep ball, 0.6 EPA allowed there, 46% completion rate, 28 air yards per target. So that kind of speaks to what Mike Evans can do. But again, the hamstring is just a risk point. So Evans being out there hurts Godwin. Rashad White, we know, just has a hard time getting there in any situation. I could see going to the stack, and I'm sure I will, but it's one of the ones where I feel like you really have to hold your nose because there's risk everywhere. I think playing Tampa Bay stacks, even though Baker's played out of his mind this year. Like Baker has been incredibly good relative to what I would expect out of Baker.
When you say Baker stacks, are you thinking more skinny, or do you have Godwin's and Evans together?
I think more skinny, but I think I'll have a couple two-mans with Evans and Godwin or Evans and K. Dotton.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think I'm in line with that. It's a good game, though. That's one not to ignore. Decent spots on all the sites. And I will say, with 2 games left, it's a perfect time to remind people again, get to OwnersBox. The overlay, it's still out there. Yeah, the contest, of course, starting to fill up, but there are massive opportunities there. So if you have some money lying around, maybe you deposited to get our Sims tools a little earlier and you haven't registered in a couple weeks, throw a couple lineups in there. You see that? Look, less than half full still. $25,000 up for grabs on the top of that tournament. No reason not to attack it, especially if there's dead money in that pool. 125K over there in that prize pool. You're going to play that. You want to listen to this because Arizona and the Rams is probably a key to any slate on any format, on any site. Good game here. Certainly the Rams at home are the rightful favorites. But let's start with Arizona. Again, I listened to Josh early in the day, and I had to agree. I'm getting to some Joshua Dobbs as well. He's a pay down option. He's got easy pairings, and it opens up a lot of salary. Are you getting to Dobbs in your stacks, and what do you do with Arizona today?
I'm right now with the field on Dobbs around 5-6%, which I don't mind. Dobbs has quietly been very good this year, and I think it's to the point where Dobbs has played so well. I think there's going to be a question if Kyler Murray comes in and doesn't play as well as Dobbs did. I think that's a pretty damning indoctrination of Kyler Murray. But Dobbs, yeah, running 5 times per game, getting 1 red zone rush per game. That looks pretty good. He's efficient everywhere. We know who the targets he's going to go to the most are: Marquise Brown, Zach Ertz. I think the backfield situation being kind of a mess too. Amari DiMercado going to be the higher priced one, but Keontae Ingram, probably the starter, a guy they have actual draft capital on, who they want to see if he's going with the neck issues he's had lately. I think that it sort of pushes me towards saying the pass games would get more opportunity. And I do expect the Rams to have success. So I think there's logic in Dobbs going there, but the chalky play on the other side, I think like the Rams stack, it's like a fractional amount of the Rams stack. I think the Rams are in an objectively like very good spot, whereas Dobbs is like kind of interesting tournament play if you're single or doubling him.
Yeah. I mean, so the thing with Dobbs, why he comes up is Zach Ertz, very comfortable with him at tight end. Hollywood Brown, I like that price point as well. So once you have a couple of them, it's like, oh, well, I can kind of get to Dobbs in this spot. But you mentioned the Rams on the other side. Stafford, he might be the QB1 on this slate. He grades out fantastic in the top stacks tool. He's got every weapon imaginable, and that might be a bad thing maybe. I don't know. It's a little difficult. When you look to build Stafford stacks, is it Kupp? Is it Nakua? Is it both? Is it Kyron? Is it Higg? Like, what are you doing with this team?
I think it's a thing with Stafford and Kupp, I imagine, get forced in a lot. Stafford and Kyron also get forced in a lot. I think trying to go to Stafford, Kyron, and Kupp is unique. Going to Stafford, Kupp, and Puka. Puka's salary is so ungodly tough, but if these guys do have an outlier day together, Puka and Kupp, that's like you're gobbling up so much salary playing that double. But I think if that's one where those guys like Kupp gets you 35 to 40, Puka gets you 25, like you might have just cut your parlay substantially by playing a Stafford double. And I guess you could maybe even play QB +3 and throw in Kyron there. That feels a little thin given the salaries, but I think that could come up in a few lineups. But the Rams, I think, look really good. The issue is just that everybody's going to be on this game. The game theory of it, to me, screams like maybe just don't play this game at all, or just don't play the Rams stacks at all because of how much people are going to be there in different configurations. But I'll give it a shot, I think, to a certain amount, but probably not as much as the Sims are going to put me on, where it's like 20% Stafford, 17% Kupp, 27% Kyron. I think that'll just put you holding hands at the field. And I don't know that that's where I want to be unless you're getting a unique configuration with like 2-2.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know if I don't see a lot of Rams that are leveraged within the stack. I think if you're going to be different with Ram stacks, you have to do it outside of the stack itself. To me, the stack builds itself with the guys you just talked about. The biggest problem is what you also alluded to. I mean, Stafford, Kupp, and Nakua is almost $24,000. That's a lot. Can it be done? Yeah, Stafford's a statue, and that helps because you need him to throw the ball like 45 times to get these guys 12, 14 targets each or something like that. Great team to target. I don't see a lot else. I'm not getting to Atwell. Higbee's kind of on the outside. I think Kyron is fine. Anything else for the Rams? It's a good team, but again, expensive stack.
Yeah, Higbee, I guess, too. Again, if you are trying to cut the ownership product of the stack, if it's like Stafford plus Cup and Higbee, you're getting a little bit different. Stafford, I mean, I guess honestly, it just feels like this game, like Ben mentioned, just looking at it more, it's like I just don't know what you play because there's still going to be okay ownership on Higbee. He's the least owned out of all. He and Tutu are probably the only guys that are going to be under 5% ish. But I just don't think you're sneaking up on anybody here. So these guys are all great plays. I wouldn't ignore it. But I do think like the more you just go with the good guys in the stack, you really got to find some unique plays elsewhere. And if you're playing like Stafford with Cup and then Mostert and then, a value play, like you're probably going to be holding hands with a lot of the field. So I like the game, but I feel like just the game theory of it, I don't know that I want to play as much as I am currently slated to be playing.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Again, there will be some lineups where I have a kind of a low owned twist outside of my stack, and I say this is a good spot to slide in some Rams exposure. But if you go like Hubbard, Mostert, the Ram stack, Ertz run back, or no. Really solid, maybe cash viable if you tweak it a little. Not sure that's the Millie route that I want to take. But all right, last game, and then we're going to turn it over. Don't go anywhere. Eric Lindquist, Matt Gajewski. They've got you covered. Me and Spags will bounce that out of here, and they'll be in there in 2 minutes. Do not leave. But if you're gonna hit the like button, do it before they get in here because we want these likes attributed to us. Of course, it's all about it's a dog eat dog world here at Stochastic. We need the likes. Not Eric and Gajewski. They got you covered though with great stuff leading you up to lock. Man, I was I gotta say pseudo once a show. I'm a pseudo Jets fan. I was excited for this game. But now I found out that the secondary is in shambles. I'm not that excited. But maybe that makes me more excited to talk about Jalen Hurts and the pass catchers. When you look at this, another expensive stack. I respect the Jets defense, but Sauce and another counterpart in that secondary are missing. What are you doing with the Eagles?
Yeah, losing Sauce is huge here. I have actually an underdog battle royale team where I took AJ Brown and was like, this is contrarian probably to get a Brown at pick 20. And I actually feel good about that now in hindsight because it is a much better spot for AJ Brown than it would have been heading into this game. That said, the total hasn't moved that much, just 24.8 implied points for the Jets. So or for the Eagles going against the Jets. So maybe not the biggest cosign from Vegas that it's going to matter that much. But I view Sauce as being one of the most important corners in the league in terms of what he can do, pressing on the line, not losing anything downfield. But they have been a little bit worse on the year. You take Sauce and everybody else who's out of that defense, it does seem like it's a better matchup. And Jalen Hurts just being, under-owned again, under 5%. I think an interesting tournament play when you know that Jalen Hurts is probably the one QB on the slate that can give you 40 to 50, I think is something that's kind of interesting there. So Philly stacks are in play for me. I'm definitely going to hand force in some Hurts and AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. You can make the case still do. I've mentioned a few times across here. And of course, my podcast Splash Play, I think it's now last year was like 1A, 1B for AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. This year, I think it's like number one, clear number two, and Goddard somewhere in between there. But it's still Devontae Smith getting enough usage out there for 73 snaps per game, running 36 routes, actually more than AJ Brown. He's going to have a good game one of these weeks. So I think double stacks your work, single stacks. Like this is a sneaky spot here that's gotten a lot better because of the guys that are out.
Last thing for the Eagles, and then we'll turn to the Jets. What about Swift?
I could see the logic of 11% ownership for him or 12% on Stochastic, 11% across the industry. And then you still have the Gainwell thing nipping at his heels there. I don't know that I love Swift in this spot, but I guess there's the logic for Swift would be like the Eagles defense completely shuts down the Jets. And then basically that they're just like, all right, well, I guess we're just going to run Swift 20 times here and feel pretty good about that. So there's a pathway he can get there. But on this slate with so many guys, like I guess Swift being kind of a forgotten man is a reason to play him. But I think there's a reason he's kind of a forgotten man because he does have a couple things that are, again, nipping at his heels in terms of his upside.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I didn't get to him. Doesn't feel great. It maybe, but at the same time, I think it's pretty narrow. I will say, looking at a team right now for me, Jalen Hurts double stack with Smith and Goddard. I like the look of this build. I do. I think this is an interesting tournament play. My biggest question is on the other side, Breece Hall. They said, okay, he's good to go, and they weren't lying. 22 for 177. Now Denver's Denver and Philly's Philly. Breece Hall, Wilson, not Zach, but maybe you could talk about him too. Are there any Jets playmakers that you're comfortable getting to?
I'm getting 5% Garrett Wilson, and that's about it. I'm happy to let people chase the Breece Hall thing. I get Breece. Like, I think he's a very talented player. The issue for Breece is that, like, part of the reason I think he got there was they were really selling out to stop Zach Wilson, which is a funny sentence to say, but Denver knows how bad they are defending the passes. So they did allow Breece Hall to get going there. The Eagles are not going to have any weaknesses at all. Like, I think they're going to get a lot of pressure up front on Zach Wilson. I think it's going to be a bad time for them. Garrett Wilson, even him, like, I'm going to play 5%. And I think even that might be too much trust there. I just think this Jets offense, like, if people want to chase Breece, I'm happy to let them do it. I just don't think it's a spot for me to do it.
Yeah, it's tough sledding for the Jets today. I'm fine with a one-off here and there. If you stack it up and you want to bring back, it would be one of those two, though. I have zero interest in Jets stacks. I have zero interest in Jets defense. I don't have much interest in anything there. 11 up, 11 down. I appreciate you guys, Spags. Thanks for hanging out, wearing double hats. Guy's a true professional, as you can see. And Jordan Klein behind the glass, making the show go. As I said, don't go anywhere. Take a sip of water. Listen to the sultry music that we've got playing or whatever else goes on. And Eric Lindquist and Matt Gajewski are coming up next. For me, for Spags, and for everyone here at Stochastic, enjoy the day. Enjoy Live Before Lock. We'll talk to you next week. Loughy will be back.
It's like a movie trailer team.
Well, they've lost close games.
Yeah. If only that counted for something.
It does. It counts in my heart. Beating up USC.
They get some brownie points, but that's all they get.
Okay, well, we're going to get NFL Live Before Lock going here. Welcome, everybody. Smash that like button as we get started here. It's week 6 in the NFL. I'm ready to rock. I'm alongside producer Jordan Klein, and I'm alongside my good friend, Matt Gajewski. Matt_Gajewski over on X. Just talking a little pre-show. His Notre Dame Fighting Irish, I don't call it a lost season. You lost last play of the game against Ohio State. I don't remember your other loss, but like legitimately put the pounding on USC. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about expectations. If your expectations are going to a title, the season's lost. If your expectations are to win 10 games, lose some you shouldn't, and win some you shouldn't too, I guess, then it's a successful season. So I don't know. It depends on how you want to look at what Notre Dame's done so far and what you were expecting to begin the year.
How spoiled are you?
as a Notre Dame fan?
Yes.
You are an Iowa State fan? Right? And an Oregon fan?
Yeah. I'm married into an Oregon family. I went to Iowa State.
That was a tough game.
Yeah, that was a tough one to watch. You knew Penix was going to come in and it was two plays. They scored almost too quickly. And then, well, that fourth and three is going to haunt us for many, many moons. But still, it was an enjoyable game to watch. Lots of great stuff going on in the college football streets yesterday. And Matt, obviously, is spearheading pretty much everything that we do in the college football streets. Him and Ben Rasa, if you guys are not over on the Odd Shopper channel watching them every single week, I just basically tail them at this point. It's a profitable thing. So I would recommend doing it as well. He's also just, when he smiles, the whole world smiles with him. That's what it is. Jordan Klein nodding in agreement. But smash that like button as we get started. It's week 6 in the NFL. And generally, we start the show a little bit later, but all the actives just dropped. The main ones that I wanted to touch on, Elijah Mitchell, active. That's going to mitigate a little bit of Christian McCaffrey interest that I might have had as a super contrarian piece on this slate. Robert Woods active, Tank Dell inactive. Think that's one we should probably be touching on. T. Higgins active for week 6 as well. Matt, where do you kind of want to start with those?
I think T. Higgins is the biggest one because we've seen this absolutely monstrous target share for Jamar Chase in his absence. And he's at a pretty good target share even with T on the field. But I say this one I think is the most important because Jamar is drawing some pretty gnarly ownership. And there's a lot of alternatives in the range. Still a really good game. And I would guess Jamar's target share persists. He's been the engine of the offense. They need to use him like that. But like you said with Elijah Mitchell and Christian McCaffrey, it at least needs to be noted there's more competition than there has been in recent weeks. So that was the biggest one for me.
Yep, that's the biggest one here for me as well. John Mechie talked about him on the Thursday matchup show, thought that there might be some relevance there. Robert Woods being in probably mitigate some of it. I don't know how much he can get on the field. It feels like he's just been slowly worked up in some capacity. And then Tank Dell's just been really, really good for this football team. But that kind of does it for me. T. Higgins in as well. Obviously, you're still going. Trent Irwin, come off the field, sir. And it just becomes a little bit more T. Higgins. But let's get to it here. We start at the quarterback position. We'll have a little extra time to talk stacks. Probably get out of here a tiny bit early here as well. Give us a chance to maybe double over our lineups and make sure everything looks good. I'm running some sims here in the background, running everything here, not in a jail cell, just in a lovely hotel room, making everything work here on this Sunday. Let's party, Matt Gajewski at the top of quarterback. Kind of a super contrarian stance. I have one of my 3 big lineups is a Jalen Hurts lineup today going up against the Jets. No Sauce Gardner. Number of different ways where this game might shoot out a little bit more than people expect. Jalen Carter on the other side of this one for the Philadelphia Eagles, the number 1 defensive interior lineman by PFF grading so far this season. Probably going to be out. I'm going to be paying very close to those inactives. And then Sauce Gardner out as well for the Jets side. So it's going to be a wild one, I believe. There for the Philly Jets game. So I'm kind of looking at a contrarian stand on Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa. What more can you say? Justin Fields, Kirk Cousins, starting above 7K. Who are you getting the most of in tournaments?
Yeah, I think Hurts is the easy answer up here. Just with all the rushing equity he provides, and it's not even the normal rushing equity we saw from last year. So much of it is just coming down to QB sneaks. If they're anywhere near the red zone, it's not DeAndre Swift or any rusher. They're sneaking the ball from like the 4-yard line now and just doing it on multiple plays. That's what they're going to do. They've shown repeatedly now that Hurts is just going to get a monstrous rushing output by the goal line. So I think just raw projection wise and scoring upside via touchdowns, Hurts has a ceiling that's a little different than Fields and Tagovailoa. Fields has the same rushing upside, but the Bears don't score a lot and they don't do that near the goal line. So his touchdown equity is a little lower. And Tua, we've seen him absolutely demolish slates via the air, but it's still harder to do that than it is for Hurts to just like run in a touchdown from a QB sneak right by the goal line. I think there's merit to all 3, but if you force me to pick one, I would pick Hurts.
I'm with you. He's the one guy above 7K that I'm actually going to be rostering in some capacity. Through the Sims tool, there are really none of these guys that are showing up outside of Tua. And in the lineup generator, which I was doing a little bit before the show as well, Tua showing up quite a bit with some interesting contrarian ways to build out Miami. And I have one guy at the running back position. Oh boy, best of luck to me and Salvin Ahmed. What am I doing with my life? That is Probably a question I should ask myself a lot. But under 7K, this is where it starts to really get interesting, I believe. And a lot of people rostering Joe Burrow. He had a pulse, 6,300, continually getting steamed up as the week goes on. Matthew Stafford, he's had a pulse all season long, played awesome, 6,100. He's your most owned quarterback on this entire slate at 14%. Lots of targets here in the 6K range. Who are you landing on the most, Matt?
Yeah, Stafford just in that really good game environment, so he makes a lot of sense. And quarterback's still pretty flat with ownership. You're talking about 15 to 15% on the higher end for these guys. So it's not crazy to still play Matthew Stafford and then just be contrarian with your stacks. This is actually a position where I like playing some of the chalk, Stafford being one of the main pieces at 6,100. I think it's very easy to go back to Joe Burrow too. This is my second favorite game behind the LA Rams, Arizona Cardinals game. You could definitely see some shootout potential. Seattle's defense hasn't been fantastic. So, you look at matchups where Burrow struggled, teams that are generating a lot of pressure. Seattle doesn't exactly do that, and their secondary is pretty banged up in this slate. Getting T. Higgins back should help him too. These are my two favorite guys. If you have the salary, I don't hate a contrarian Trevor Lawrence. What do you think about Indy's pace with Anthony Richardson being out? Because they've been really fast, but I'm not sure Jacksonville's like the kind of opponent with their high-powered offense that you really want to try to get into like a track meet with, is my thought there. So right now I do have Trevor Lawrence third among these big three in this range, but I don't feel good about it. And I wanted to hear what you think about it.
Yeah. So if we're going back to the Baltimore 22-19, your entire start of Gardner Minshew, he's made obviously 3 appearances, 2 of them in relief of Anthony Richardson. They do slow it down a little bit, and you get Jonathan Taylor back in the mix and, team establish the run, trying to make stuff work in that department. But I think for the most part, Gardner Minshew from a throwing perspective is an upgrade. And I think that you could probably put passing expectation a little bit higher on the old scale here in this one. I'm in love with Michael Pittman for tournaments today. I think that he's going really underutilized against a Jacksonville secondary that I'm not all that sold on. I think that we saw some decent stuff for them against Buffalo, but pretty much everything was going against Buffalo in that game. Jacksonville stayed over for 2 weeks in London. Now they're coming back over, and maybe that could be part of it. Maybe there's some sluggishness there, but that is not going to bear out in the data for me. I do think Gardner Minshew is going to be just fine here in this one, like identifying Michael Pittman, like getting to that side of it. So as a result, I'm going to be playing some Trevor Lawrence. I've currently got 12% of him. Feel pretty good about the combination of him, Kirk. Now with Zay Jones out, though, he's been less effective. Zay Jones has, for whatever reason, helped this team just have another option on the field. But Evan Ingram, Ridley, Kirk, I kind of like all of them for tournaments today. I'm assuming you feel the same way.
Yeah, my favorite's Ridley. It looks like Kirk is going to come in pretty owned, and I think this is just a price play. He's in the mid-5s, so he's pretty easy to click into your lineup, and you can make a lot of things work around him. I still think Ridley's the most talented receiver. He struggled with drops a lot this year, but you would expect that to normalize at some point. And I don't fear this Indy secondary. So I'll echo everything you said, but I like Ridley quite a bit as a contrarian play off of what it looks like Kirk is going to draw in terms of ownership.
Now, as we're looking at the top stacks tool, Matthew Stafford, let's just talk about it because they are above and away number one here. Cooper Kupp on the field a bunch. Puka Nacua been the most exciting young player in the NFL outside of maybe a Bijan Robinson when not handcuffed behind Tyler Algier. When you have a healthy Achane. I would say from the wide receiver perspective, though, Puka Nacua is setting the world on fire, and you get both of them out there. It's a tough stack to put together just because of the price of those two, especially bringing Nacua along for the ride, but that might be more reason to get to it. I'm going to try to get to a little bit more there, but they are our top stack in the top stacks tool. You know who's number 2? Have you looked?
I haven't.
Tampa Bay. Wild to see them with the second highest rating here, ahead of Miami here. We got Jordan Klein pulling it up here on the screen. I think that this is an incredible tournament slate for late swap, specifically because you've got Stafford and a number of these pieces, specifically because Miami, if they don't completely go off, and I'm below the field there on Tua, above 7K based on what we talked about there earlier. Cincinnati gets Higgins back, but that might dilute what you're getting for Jamar Chase there in that spot. I'm in love with the combination of these two. So for me, Matthew Stafford's the piece of chalk that I'm the most willing to eat at the quarterback position. because he gives me access to the afternoon window. Talked about how that Jets-Philadelphia game's interesting. I think even the Vegas side, number of skill position players you want to get to. With 4 games in that late window, I know late swap's something you and I talk about a ton, but just seeing Tampa Bay ranked that high, it's a cheap stack to put together with tons of upside. I think Matthew Stafford, I'm just going to be jamming because those doubles bring along more salary with Nakua and Kupp, and I can play with my lineups as the afternoon goes on based on how things are going in that early slate of games. So I love getting to Stafford, but that might not be the case come kickoff of that game. Just playing him more upfront. Anything that you're looking at from a late swap perspective at quarterback? Because again, I think that that's going to be a big part of what I do today.
Yeah, I think you broke it down well. I'm currently looking at my lineups. Most recent run, I had 18% Stafford as my most on quarterback. It's pretty spread, but Baker was actually number 2 at 15%. So a lot of late swap equity there. We'll see how the games go, but yeah, I like these 2 plays individually, and then just having the late swap bonuses, a little feather in your cap.
A feather in your cap. Let's see. We've got running back, wide receiver, tight end. Looking at the positions, obviously quarterback, a lot of it is going to dictate what you do with the rest of your lineups. And that's when we get to these cheapies. I wanted to at least highlight star circle Baker Mayfield, because nobody's talked about him here going up against Detroit all week long. I guess he's now pulling the most ownership in our projections here. Joshua Dobbs, I guess, is right alongside 5,200 in that game environment, but I just think it's so easy to stack up Baker Mayfield and know exactly what you're getting. I like getting to Rachaad White as a super contrarian piece at running back. Don't think anybody's talked about him either. Mr. Oliver, not exactly working out for Tampa Bay in the early goings here, but on the cheap end, who are you identifying as tournament darts?
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of them already. Those are players I definitely like. Mayfield. Did you say he's the second most on quarterback now?
No. Under 6K, he's the second highest owned amongst the range. You got Joshua Dobbs there, 6.2% there at 5,200, the game environment. And then Baker, he's 6.1%. I'd be a little bit surprised based on what we've seen on previous slates here.
Yeah, okay, I get you now. Baker, Josh Dobbs, and Gardner Minshew are my 3 favorites down here. All of them, I think, have overachieved compared to expectations. Minshew might be my single favorite of this group. Indy's played fast, and like you said earlier, we expect them to reduce their pace a little bit, but Jacksonville's also pass heavy and fast on the other side. So this game has a lot of up and down appeal. I don't respect either defense. As long as Minshew can have a pulse and deliver the ball to Jonathan Taylor and Pittman and Downs, that's a game I like to get up back and forth. And Minshew's coming in with some ownership. I think it's more of a price play, but I like the way the roster construction works with him as well. He does allow you to jam more studs because of that price.
Yeah. And one place you can jam a ton of studs is OwnersBox. You have the opportunity to roster a lot of these quarterbacks together and put together full-fledged game stacks. One of my favorites that I was building out a little bit before the show was the Detroit Tampa Bay one, where, hey, there might be an opportunity for a Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff getting Amon-Ra St. Brown back into the mix. Sam Laporte has been playing awesome. We'll see and make sure that he's 100% healthy to go. They did say this morning that they did expect him to go, but like getting to that entire game stack. And then, what you brought up earlier, Indy and Jacksonville, that one is an awesome game stack to put together over on OwnersBox. Yeah, with the super flex, you're allowed to. You can totally put Gardner Minshew. You can put Trevor Lawrence together and have all of those weapons from Indy. Well, the one, Michael Pittman, that I'm going to be rostering. Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss, probably going to be more of a split going forward. In Jacksonville, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram at the tight end position. Really fun game environment, I think. That's another one that I'm pretty excited to roster. One of my 3 main lineups does come from this one. And yeah, Michael Pittman, he is my highest owned wide receiver today. So best of luck to me on losing tons of money. That's going to be enjoyable. But telling you, this is a great spot, OwnersBox, to be able to go sign up, take advantage of some of the overlay that they've had routinely in contests. And over on DK today, like the Gardner Minshew call out, I think that he's going to be somebody in large field that I'm taking quite a few shots here. Not exactly positive where I'm going to land here, mainly because Baker Mayfield is showing up so much for me. So much. That's not what I expected coming into Sunday, but here we are. Anything else at quarterback that you would like to touch on, my friend?
I think we hit on just about every main player that I'm using. There's a sprinkling here and there of some of the other random guys like CJ Stroud, Geno, but nobody that I'm actually, flag planting or anything like that. We hit on most of the players I would be considering.
Oh, gigantic pick there. Tannehill takes a shot. Lamar Jackson coming back out on the field. 18-13 Baltimore, Tennessee. Love watching these games leading into the main slate of games. Going to be a fun one today. Going to be a fun one. Oh, should also throw this out here. I know that we talked about it, I'm sure, throughout this entire show, whether it was the deeper dive, Josh leading us into it, but get your stochastic avatar and get yourself into the Hall of Fame here. If you guys have a massive, massive day here at Stochastic, using our tools, using anything, or you just want to download the avatar and try to get yourself a free month of Stochastic Platinum, I don't care the reason. Check it out. There's going to be a link that Jordan Klein posts into chat here for you. Take advantage. Stochastic.com/avatar. If you tweet your wins, it's going to be 5,000 contestants or more, top 3 of a contest. If you finish there, you tweet it to Stochastic HOF, you're going to get yourself a free month of Stochastic Platinum. Really great stuff. Again, have some fun. Get yourself some tournament W's and come sharing that with us, and then we can give you some free stuff on the side. Sounds nice to me. Probably sounds pretty good to you too. So go download that avatar and get to it. And we're going to get to the running back position, which is this the wildest running back position that we've had on any slate all season long, Matt Gajewski?
Yeah, it's pretty weird. There's a lot of little nuances to it. I think because of the salary and Chuba Hubbard being so cheap, you can go a number of different ways. Paying up, I think, will be contrarian on this slate with all of the cheap backs and then the elite receivers people will be jamming. But there's actually a lot to consider at running back, more than normal, I think. So yeah, really weird.
Miami has a 31 total. Miami has a 31 total. I think this is where we start because I think I'm going to break it down a little bit by tiers. We've got one expensive guy in Christian McCaffrey. I have a lot less interest now with Eli Mitchell. And again, just somebody that I think might cut into the workload a little bit more than a Jordan Mason. I know he hadn't at times at the beginning of the season, but then did so on a short week. I just think knowing that he's there, knowing that it exists, I think that can be a little problematic where they don't have to put the pedal to the metal with McCaffrey as much. But I want to start in this mid tier because you have Raheem Mostert. They have a 31 total. You have no Devon Achane. How are we handling Mostert on this slate? Because I'm just playing him and thinking about everything else in my lineups after.
Yep, that's what I'm doing too. And I think most people should be doing the same. Not anticipating this to be a 50-50 committee as it's been previously. I think Salvon Ahmed's probably your 2. He's had some success with them in the past, but pretty wide talent gap between Mostert and any of the backups today. So I'm with you, playing Mostert, figuring out the rest from there.
So I have 80% Raheem Mostert.
I'm not that high. That's
I'm just saying what I'm doing, okay? And then
it's awesome.
I have 10% Salvon Ahmed because I just think if Mostert isn't the guy who, if he goes out and fails here in this spot, I just got to think it's a $4,500 Salvon Ahmed. And there are plays in this 4,500 and under range that we have not had all season long here at running back. You've got Donta Foreman, who's going to pull ownership. That is going to be a wild conversation. You have Chuba Hubbard, Hubba, in this same game, who's going to be pulling tons of ownership. I think Salvon Ahmed is like somebody nobody at all is clicking on. And I'm a little confused by it because if we're looking at Mostert, are we just expecting for a 40% change in his role where he's going to go from being like a 50-50 split here with Achane the last couple of weeks into like 75-85% of the touches? Now, that's in the range of outcomes, but when you're talking about a guy who's 0.3% on a team with a 31 implied total, I'm going to roll the dice in that spot. So am I the craziest person that has ever done one of these shows ever?
No, I mean, your exposure to Mostert is a risk tolerance thing.
Yes.
If Mostert like gets hurt or fumbles or something like he has in the past, you just lost 80% of your lineups. But if he smashes, you put 80% of your lineups that are probably live for a big score then. So it's just risk tolerance. Speaking to the play individually, Raheem Mostert is awesome. You could see this be a 50-50 timeshare, or you could see him dominate work. I like the way you're playing it, where it's mostly Mostert, but then you accounted for the potential with the timeshare. With Ahmed, he's entirely unowned. You basically have to boost his projection to get him in any lineups. But this is a volatile situation. We've never seen Mostert Ahmed in this situation before. And everyone in the industry is guessing on projections. If you have a feel on this and think Ahmed plays a little more than the field, you should definitely be getting some. He's extremely cheap, and he'll be a low-owned pivot off some of the other cheap chalk in this range.
Just wanted to start there because I think it kind of flows into the rest of the running back position where you have Kyren Williams, 6,500, Josh Jacobs, 7K, Joe Mixon, 6,300, David Montgomery, 7,300, Alvin Kamara, 6,800. Lots of guys pulling lots of ownership. And I haven't even said my favorite guy above 6K period for tournaments today, but I'm going to ask you first, out of these chalkier running backs, who do you land on the most and who are you most inclined to be lower on the field then?
Landing, so this is excluding Raheem Mostert. Land on David Montgomery the most. I think this is a pretty good game environment against Tampa. They defend the run well, but at this point, I don't know if it matters. So much of the offense flows through David Montgomery. We know the red zone role. He's a good pass catcher. His role is just so unbelievably good here that it's hard to fade him even at his price. The most likely to fade is Chuba Hubbard. Pricing is very scary. So is Chuba's inefficiency and the entire inefficiency of the offense. So with the running back position, clicking Chuba into your lineup, you might just be dealing with an opportunity cost situation where, yeah, he's cheap, but if he scores 12 points, you'd probably rather have like the 30 from a much better back. But anyway, this is just nitpicking. I'm still playing some Chuba Hubbard. He's a very good play. You just asked me out of this range who would be the most likely to fade, and it would be him if I was doing it, but I'm not.
Swoop. These two don't interact with their viewers. We always interact with our viewers. I'm always taking comments, always firing it off. I just feel like this is a slate that, you know, even though we have over an hour to be able to talk through everything, the running back position is kind of the Wild West. We have a ton to get to, and I just kind of want to stay focused on that. If we have super chats that pop up, we can definitely go through some of those here as well throughout this program, but want to just kind of go through this in a way where we're able to talk about some of our favorite targets to be getting to. My favorite target above 7K, didn't bring his name up, so it's not like somebody you could have landed on. I'm obsessed with Travis Etienne today. I have a lot of Michael Pittman. Don't think the run backs are necessarily that important here when you're talking about 1-1. It's kind of a hand build type deal that I'm looking at. But my main lineup, if I'm going to be getting to a lot of Pittman, and I'm looking at this Jacksonville and Indianapolis game is one I want a lot of skill position players from, not necessarily having to play the quarterbacks here, but definitely think that there is an opportunity for Travis Etienne to continue setting the world on fire. Went over to Buffalo, faced a really good Buffalo defense. No Tre'Davious White out there as well, but not that it matters as much for Etienne. Just saying, 31 opportunities there. Tank Bigsby has been one of the more inefficient running backs in the NFL so far this season by just about every single metric. And we're looking at him sub 15% purely because there are so many targets up here. I'm just looking at that spot as one that maybe the field goes a little bit, it's going a little bit quiet because anytime something big happens over there in old London and it wasn't on a main slate, people don't react to it the same way. So Travis Etienne, pretty gigantic fan getting to him. What is your interest level in him?
Yeah, I like Etienne, and not interacting with the viewers is just not true. My DMs are open to the public, and I answer every single one. So Swoop, if you need me to hold your hand through the slate, hit me up on Twitter. As you can see in the chat, there's a lot of questions. We can't possibly answer them all. So DMs open. Hit me up if you need your hand held. In this range, I love Etienne just like you. This is an awesome game environment. It's the game I have the most exposure to. You probably gathered that after the Gardner Minshew talk. But Etienne has kind of iced Tank Bigsby, which is something we can definitely look to in this range. I mentioned Montgomery. He would be my just stone cold favorite up here. But Etienne, I think, is a nice pivot. Jacobs has an excellent workload too. He just has been hyper inefficient so far. So to rank the backs above 7K, for me, it would be David Montgomery 1, Etienne 2, Josh Jacobs 3, and then Bijan would be 4.
Can we change his name to Matt Hold My Hand Gajewski, please? Or Matt Darius Rucker Gajewski, one of the two? Hootie and the Blowfish Gajewski? What are we doing? My DMs are open. All right. I see what we're doing here. See,
you can DM me. It's all good. Like, I actively try to interact with the audience. It's why they're open to the public. It takes a long time to answer all the DMs, but I actively make sure that I do. So hit me up anytime you want, guys.
Oh, my hand. So good. I really, that was the highlight of my Live Before Lock shows with you this year. That's for sure. Here we go to the running back position, continuing down the board. Because again, too many guys to talk about. So many guys that are showing up here in the Sims tool as like contrarian pieces. Again, Josh Jacobs breaking the damn thing. There are certain spots where it's just like there's nothing you can do. You're going to get to Josh Jacobs utilizing our tools and data here today. That is just a foregone conclusion. But somebody else, Rachaad White, 5,500 there. As we go below the 6K range or around the 6K range, you got DeAndre Swift, 6,100. Breece Hall, 6K. He's pretty good at football, huh? Shout out Iowa State, just saying. And then Kenneth Walker, well, way up there at 6,700, just a piece that I'm trying to get to a little bit contrarian-wise because Cincinnati giving up gobs of yardage on the ground this season. But yeah, getting down below 6K here, we're starting to get a little bit thin. We're starting to get into a range where you're really kind of finding your darts. And I'm playing some Breece Hall. I'm playing a little bit of DeAndre Swift here, not as much as I was expecting, but I'm getting to tons of Rachaad White. That shouldn't be a surprise here if I'm trying to get to a little bit more Baker Mayfield and things of that nature. How are you feeling about the sub 6K running back group?
I'm not feeling great about it. By far, the player I have the most of is Chuba, if you want to go all the way down to that range immediately. But rather than play these 5K backs, I'm kind of just finding my way up to Mostert and the mid 6Ks. I agree with you. Breece Hall's my favorite in this range, and Rachaad White would be too. That's just basically workload for these two guys. Breece, I expect to continue handling a large workload. I think a lot of people, they're going to talk about Jalen Carter. Philly is really, really deep on the D-line. So his absence is big, but you have depth here. It's not like this matchup for Breece Hall becomes, a cupcake without Jalen Carter. So it's still pretty tough for Breece. He is in a timeshare to some degree. I think he'll continue to see more work. But all this to say, the holes you can poke in Breece just make me want to go up to Mostert in that range. And I think you can say the same thing about Rachaad White and the other pieces. For me, they're just sprinklings in the 150 set I'm running. Otherwise, it's either up to Mostert, down to Chuba in this range.
All right, we got over 3K people. We just broke down the running back pretty in depth there. And Chuba, but before we get off of this, Ramon Blackshear, he's not going to be playing, right? Raheem Blackshear isn't going to be playing at all.
I wouldn't expect him to play a lot.
Where did
He'll
he
play
go?
some. I mean, he's like a
Tech?
preseason hero. He went to Virginia Tech. Yeah, he went to Rutgers before that.
He was good at Virginia Tech, from what I remember.
He's a really good pass catcher, yeah.
Okay, maybe don't remember that. Okay. Well, just wanted to check. We got myself, Jordan Klein, Matt Gajewski, working here on a lovely Sunday afternoon. Just smash that like button for us. Need to get those likes well north of 1,000. Loughy, yeah, he's out here today. He's generally the one who smashes getting these likes. But, Matt is bringing you the humor. He's bringing you laughs on this Sunday as well. God knows I'm not. Jordan, you're not supposed to keep nodding when I say. Oh, I am. Okay, thank you. There you go. See, you're building your co-host up so I can talk about great things like OwnersBox. So I can talk about great things like the stochastic lineup generator, which we're going to jump into right now. Lineup generator here, friends. You want to be able to make lineups quick, efficiently. Let's say you're going to church. Let's say that you have brunch. Let's say you have something going on in your life and you don't have the time to sit down and ruminate over lineups or go through this comprehensively for 90 minutes on a live before lock show with Matt Gajewski and myself. First of all, we're sad about that because we love hanging out with you and talking through our process, talking through late swap, talking through our favorite plays and targets based on the tools, based on what we're seeing here in the numbers. But the lineup generator does all of that for you instantly. You go to the DraftKings main, you click, you simply pick if you want one stack, one run back, if you want to have double stacks with run backs. Let's do the double stacks with run backs here over on DraftKings. And you can see our data. It is taking the best lineups out of our pools, utilizing 10,000 simulations, just like the Sims tool does. And we're giving you the best of the best. If we go down to contrarian lineups here at the bottom and we click on contrarian lineups, we're going to get ourselves exposure to great tournament lineups using our data. They will give you 20. You can save up to 20 of them. Sometimes it'll save up to 40, so you can double them into a couple of the 20 max contests, things of that nature. You can look at the player exposures. This is really great flat tournament exposures. We're looking at this. Mostert, 42%. This is what? All lineups not contrarian. Okay. Well, I feel pretty good about these lineups as I'm looking at them. Raheem Mostert, Matthew Stafford, Christian Kirk, Cooper Kupp. So many great opportunities to be able to get these lineups all of them curated for you right away from the lineup generator and at a super low cost. We're talking under $15 a week to be able to check out the lineup generator. So maybe do that, especially if you're in a time crunch. And hey, one of the things I like to do from time to time as I'm preparing for shows is I like to run to see kind of what our data is going to give us for balanced builds, for contrarian builds, and kind of be able to tweak some of them myself. If you feel like a Raheem Mostert's a little bit overowned in a lineup, you're able to switch them out directly on the page here, export those directly to CSV and upload them on DraftKings, on FanDuel. Utilize this tool. You will be thankful that you did, because again, it helps you build out better lineups immediately. That's the point of the lineup generator, not just to give you the test answers, but simply to give you access to the best tools and data at a super low price, so that when you check out the Sims tool, you kind of know and have a little bit more user input to be able to put together the exact lineups that you want. The lineup generator, hey, that'll help you a lot of the way. So check it out. Great stuff from our data team week in, week out, not just in the NFL streets, going to be coming down the pipeline, I think, for everything very shortly. And the MLB streets was very, very important as well. But NBA, we got what, 10 days, 9 days? Can't wait for that, my friends. But we're going to jump to the wide receiver position, and lots of stacks that we were able to discuss earlier that are going to be massive pieces of conversation here for sure. And starting on the expensive end, we've got a Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp now, who's just playing an ungodly role immediately here for the Rams. Good to see him healthy. Good to see him out there for the entirety of that football game, basically. And then Jamar Chase coming off of setting the world on fire, 21% ownership for him at the top of the board, 8K and above, my friend. Who are you getting to the most, Matt?
This is a range I want at least 2 players, if not 3. And I think there's plenty of ways you can make 3 work. So I plan on being overexposed to a lot of guys in this range, just with roster construction. Basically, if you slot in Chuba Hubbard and then you slot in Raheem Mostert and you're not paying all the way up a QB, you can get 3 studs pretty easily. So if you force me to rank these guys, but again, I'm going to be over the field on a majority of them, I would still go Jamar Chase, number 1, price adjusted, even with T. Higgins back. That role is absolutely insane right now. Seattle secondary definitely doesn't scare you. They played better of late, but still definitely not scared of that. From there, it's pretty tough to decipher between Nacua and Kupp. So I'm just trying to play a lot of them both. Right now, I have a little bit more Kupp than Nacua. And it's scary, but I think Tyreek Hill comes in 4th for me behind those players. And a lot of it is just because playing a lot of Mostert, but I might change this as we get closer to lock, because I think a lot of people are just going to use Mostert as their Miami exposure. And as we get closer, I think Tyreek might come in a little lower owned than we think. What do you think about that?
I think there's a definite chance. Tyreek Hill, I mean, because of Raheem Mostert, people don't like to play 2 players from the same team together in lineups for whatever reason. They have a 31 total. The rules don't apply. They have a 31 total. And also that rule doesn't really apply ever when you're talking about concentrated target shares, when you're talking about teams with this much upside. But Tua is expensive. There's a lot of guys I prefer cheaper than him, and stacks that I kind of need to be able to get to more Hill, more Mostert combinations. But playing those 2 together, I have no problem with it. And playing Hill specifically, he's very good at football. He's not good at a lot of other things, but he is very, very good at football. I don't cheer for him in the game of life, if you get my drift on that one. But I think Tyreek Hill is no doubt one of the most electric players in the NFL. Getting to him on any slate where, we could be watching him put up 40, 50 balls pretty routinely this season in this Mike McDaniel offense, and no reason not to be clicking on that name today.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. I think I'm going to go in on the back end and increase my exposure to Tyreek Hill. As we talk through this, he's a guy that can break the slate, and there's just no reason to have him significantly lower exposure-wise than every one of the studs. Kupp, Nacua, I'm going to increase that right now.
Do you have any kind of concerns about Jamar Chase and his role with T. Higgins back?
A little bit, but his role was awesome even before T went out. So we have a large sample of these 2 playing together. And no, he probably doesn't see like 20 targets, but I mean, 12 to 15 is probably a good bet.
12 to 15 is a good bet. He's still too cheap, I think, at 8,300 with that kind of a role in mind. And then Puka Nacua, I'm just going to throw it out there. He didn't exactly see some kind of massive decrease in volume, 11 targets, 7 catches, and a tutty. think Puka Nacua at 8K is like your super contrarian piece, probably more of an afternoon slate for me. But said I'm playing a lot of Stafford from the get-go, trying to get to more of these guys as doubles so that I can swap around lineups, have a little bit of late swappability, if you will. 8K, just kind of nuking him a little bit to try to get to more. But do you have any kind of a take as far as him as a pivot off of Cooper Kupp and the 17% ownership he's pulling?
Yeah, I think. Don't you think they're both going to be pretty owned?
No. Puka Nacua.
Really? You think it's going to be drastically different?
Yes, I do. Cooper Kupp has that role, and people saw it right from the get-go, and you saw 12 targets for him here. I prefer Puka Nacua for tournaments, and I'm almost like trying to swap their ownership.
Yeah, I agree with that. This was a question I had. I did not think it was going to be as drastic as it is. But yeah, I mean, the roles weren't that different.
Cooper Kupp's at 17. Yeah, Cooper Kupp's at 17, Nakua's at 9, and there's like no reason for it.
No, I mean, I do think Kupp
part of it is like Cooper Kupp. Kupp's going to be in the slot more. Nacua, he played on the outside a little bit more leading into that last week in anticipation, I think. Against the Colts, you saw him lining up a lot more on the outside, less in the slot where Kupp is going to kind of dominate, and that's going to be where he is. But Nacua on the outside, Matt Stafford is showing that he can still make these throws, and I just want to keep backing him while healthy. And again, Puka Nacua, yeah, this is probably the tournament spot that I'm getting to at 8K and above, trying to differentiate. I thought Devontae Adams would end up being lower owned. He ended up getting steamed up to 12.5%. He was at like 4 or 5% when we did the matchup show on Thursday. I have a lot less interest here in this spot at 8,100. Going to probably get to a little bit more Jacoby Myers, but Puka Nacua, kind of a bigger stand for me today.
Yeah, I'm going to bring that up myself right now. I was pretty in line with the field, I thought, and low on Nacua, but it doesn't seem like you really need to take a large stand on Nacua to be over the field.
Obi-Wan, you can put Puka anywhere. Yeah, he's very good, very versatile wide receiver. Extremely impressed with the BYU legend now at this point, even though I didn't really know who he was that last year. So that's cool.
Yeah, he's got a brother that played on Utah too, but he stinks.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate for him because his brother is really good. James Magruder, $1.99, no Zach Moss, and best defense, no Zach Moss, 0 Zach Moss. If I tried to take a shot on either of him or Taylor, I talked about it a little bit earlier. I thought Taylor would make some sense simply because, you get him acclimated and you just paid him. You get Zach Moss's cheap labor to come in and run the football into the back of a line multiple times, and he's looked electric, but I have this split as 50-50, and I really have no interest at this point in time.
I agree.
Best defense. That's the other part of his question. Best defense. The best one in terms of projection, I don't think it's remotely close, is the 49ers. Eagles probably close if you had to. For tournaments, though, I am completely, insanely obsessed with getting to the Texans.
Yeah, that is interesting. I do not have a lot of them. What is your reasoning? Just New Orleans inept offense?
We'll get to there. That's a little teaser, as they might call it in the streets. A little bit of a teaser why I'm going to get to the Texans here. I think Derek Carr has problems. I don't think he's going to be able to throw the ball downfield. I thought he was kind of dustly last year, and I think Houston can probably make this an uglier game than people anticipate. I love New Orleans on the other side too. I do think that they're going to pick off CJ Stroud. Add that one as plus money at the card. That one I took completely from Loughy, looked into it, and I am 100% backing him. Plus 125, plus 130 you can find across the industry. I think BetMGM was the best spot, plus 125. CJ Stroud going to throw his first pick of the season today. But I think that game ends up pretty ugly, which is why I haven't really cited New Orleans and Houston as much as I normally would, considering, well, Kamara, I played a ton of last slate. Not going to play as much this week because he's popular. In Houston, well, without Tank Dell, I think Nico Collins is still a good target to get to in this mid-range, but I'm a little bit worried here that this game ends up a little bit ugly, and I like both defenses for tournaments.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. The mid-range for receiver is not one I honestly like a ton to begin with. But yeah, I agree with you on the tournaments. New Orleans and Houston, it's just ugly quarterback play. And Stroud's been great, still playing behind that horrible offensive line, so it's a miracle what he's done. But I agree with you. I don't think Derek Carr is any good.
Cheers, Brew, $2. Bras, yo. DK tiers, cash plays. Ooh, DK tiers. I will pull up the tiers here as we go to Goon Squad TV, $1.99 referral code for OwnersBox. You guys are legend. Throw that into the chat there. Oh, go ahead. How good are you at life, Jordan Klein? It's pinned in the chat, Jordan Klein says. I tell you what, this guy is the best producer of the game named Jordan Klein. I don't think there's a close second Jordan Klein. Jay Murphy, $5. Josh Dobbs stacks viable. He also has the 1 year thing going next to him. Yay, congratulations. But Josh Dobbs stacks viable. I think that's a massive piece of news that we're waiting on here. I didn't see anything official in terms of word for Marquise Brown, excuse me. He's got a rumbly in his tumbly. He's expected to play, I believe was the thing that I saw from Schefter last night. But hey, if he ends up out, everybody is sub 4K on this entire offense. And maybe they don't put the foot down with Marquise Brown. But I can tell you one thing. I probably prefer to have the best wide receiver on that team in to be able to stack up Josh Dobbs. Otherwise, I'll have a lot more interest as, Wilson and Moore as one-offs, possibly Ertz as a one-off. But any interest in a Josh Dobbs stack?
Yeah, it's really greasy, but he's run a ton, and he's actually played a little bit better as a passer than I ever thought he could. I remember some preseason slates where he was horrific. So it's been a pleasant surprise for them. They're throwing a lot. So, I thought this team was dead. They are not. They're actually kind of frisky on a week-to-week basis with Dobbs.
Getting frisky. Would you hold their hand?
Would I hold their hand? Yeah. Why not?
Oh, Matt just giving it up here on a Sunday. The rest of the wide receiver position, as we go sub 8K, my friends, it gets a little fun. It gets really, really fun. I think I've talked about Michael Pittman more than anybody else on planet Earth this week, so that's cool. But before that, you still have A.J. Brown now, no Sauce Gardner. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown, welcome back. You have Jalen Waddle, the pivot of all pivots on the Miami side, pulling 3% ownership. If you love tournaments and you are not overweight to Jalen Waddle today, I don't know what to tell you. You're probably doing it wrong. Again, it is not that hard to be overweight. You could get to 5% of him, and I won't bat an eye. But just saying, Jalen Waddle is 3% owned with a 31 total. Mike Evans, 7,100, talked about the reasons I like Tampa Bay. Devonta Smith, a pivot of all pivots, sub 1% here, probably should, considering his role. He's still out there running a tons of routes, but definitely targeted at a lower clip than last season. How are you looking at this next batch of wide receivers, Matt?
I agree with you for tournaments. A.J. Brown, a guy you should always be at least sprinkling if you're running 150 and Jalen Hurts stacks. Amon-Ra's too cheap if you think he's fully back immediately to his role, which I happen to think he is. Excellent play down there. Jalen Waddle's cost me a lot of money doing exactly what you've said so far this year. Doesn't mean I'm going to stop. Going right back to him in the huge total. So I agree with you. His prices come down. I do like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin in this contrarian Tampa Bay stack. My least favorite play by far is Devonta Smith. Way too expensive for his role in the offense. He's not even clearly ahead of like Dallas Goedert right now in targets. It's A.J. Brown and it's everyone else among the pass catchers. So I'll pass on Devonta Smith and let him do his cardio out there in peace.
Oh, man. One of the cardio all-stars. I want to put together the cardio all-stars where it's just MVS and Devonta Smith and these guys, and they just like run laps around a track because it'd be the same thing as what they're doing right now.
Yep.
It's really unenjoyable.
Hopefully he gets a good workout today.
Yeah, he's thin enough. I think we need to like maybe not have him out there running as much. Let's get him in the weight room. Keep working there, Devonta. Even though he does what he does well. He runs routes efficiently. He's very, very good at football. So not to besmirch him. Oh, can't forget the tiers question. I will come back to that here in a second. But first, I wanted to dip sub 7K because this is where it gets really fun. Godwin for tournaments. Yes, please. DK Metcalf. Yes, please for tournaments. Calvin Ridley. Yes, please for tournaments as well, considering still sub 15% ownership. Higgins, contrarian piece in it. Obviously, if Joe Burrow is getting healthier, how many times have doubles won slates for the last 2.5 years with Joe Burrow? Answer, a lot. And then my guy of all guys, Michael Pittman, I am just jamming him. 6,300, Gardner Minshew, better passer than Anthony Richardson. Yes, better passer in terms of efficiency than Anthony Richardson. I am going to be playing him lots. He is going to target in on a number one here. And I'm going to ride or die with that one today. How are you feeling sub 7K with the wide receiver picks? Because there are a lot of them.
The 6K range is a little tricky, I think. The player I'm getting to the most of is by far Ridley, and that's more just his stance on this game. And he'll be a pivot off Christian Kirk at a different price point with a little bit lower ownership. From there, I do like the Seattle pass catchers. So Metcalf comes up a little bit for me. Hardly have any Olave and DJ Moore, which is terrifying. Don't have a ton of T. Higgins. It's mostly just going to Jamar Chase. Pittman's the second most owned player for me, but it's still not even a large stand. A lot of my lineups are going all the way up or going all the way down, with the exception of Ridley in this range.
All right. We're going to go to the tiers for fears here super quick for the people. Jalen Hurts going to be the guy for tier 1 for me. Tyreek Hill or Christian McCaffrey, kind of a split for me in tier 2. Again, tiers, we're not talking about anything else other than projection and then perceived ownership. Then we've got David Montgomery, tier 3, tier 4, Josh Jacobs. I would prefer Travis Etienne a little bit more. Tier 5, we're going to Matt Stafford. Tier 6, Raheem Mostert, simplest one. Tier 6, definitely Mostert by a mile. Tier 7, Kyron Williams. And tier 8, my friends, to round it all together, Christian Kirk. Hopefully that helps you out. Jorge Yakum, best flex for single entry to pair with a Tua Hill Ertz with 5,700 left. So 5,700 left. I am preferring my flexes almost like just an excruciating amount of flex where I'm getting to the afternoon games at 5,700. I know that, let's see, Jacoby Myers is 5,800. That would have been the answer if you had that extra 100 for it. But at 57, I would probably have Rachaad White there and then kind of keep some swappability open to you. Who's your favorite for flex at 5,700?
Lockett's 5,700.
Oh, pop Lock and Lockett. I like it.
Yeah, I like Lockett a lot.
Yeah, we can pop Lock and Lockett. He's not afternoon, but I totally get it. RADM, $10 with an R next to it. I don't know what that means, but I really appreciate you. Hey, guys, I'm playing some props today. I'm wondering your opinion on best options for rushing and receiving yards today. Thank you. I have it. Rashad Bateman over 14.5 hit in the first half. That was one that I had a unit on to start off my lovely day, but got some good stuff going in the premium Discord. Let me just pull up my betting slips here for you. I have my favorite under that you've got for anything is George Kittle under 37.5 receiving yards. That line now currently sits at 36.5. That's minus 110 over at FanDuel. So that one's pretty decent. I like that for an under. I also have a weird one where I like Ramondre Stevenson under 13.5 rushing attempts. That ended up being something that projected out well, and the Odd Chopper tools did a great job of identifying early in the week over there. And then if you're looking for an over, because God knows the public loves their overs, Kyron Williams over 86.5 rushing plus receiving yards. Love that combination as well. Hopefully that helps you out a little bit. Do you have any favorite bets on the board today, Matt?
I don't bet the NFL.
Yeah, totally understandable. You're kind of good at the college streets. You're kind of the best in the entire industry at the college streets. So
college, I bet like crazy. College, I bet like crazy. That's NFL is extremely hard to bet, and props to you and Loughy and everyone who does it with success. So my recommendation is follow these guys because admittedly, I'm not as good as them.
I would say the key, I bet a lot more unders in the NFL than any other sport, period. End of story. So there's that. Hi, Jordan Klein. How are you this fine day? Okay, he's back. I didn't know where he went. I missed you. Come back, baby. Baltimore ended up scoring again. Justin Tucker has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Does he have 6 field goals today? Is that a real thing?
I hope not. That's insane. I have Lamar in a lot of places. So yeah, this is what a misleading score.
24-13. And now you got Malik Willis. What you talking about, Willis, out there for Liberty, the Liberty genius. He can't throw a football. That's a problem though, right, Matt?
He hasn't been able to yet.
I really have nothing else to say about that. 100 yards and a touchdown. We'll get to that one, Mason. $5. I think that seems like a good halfway point here after we talk about OwnersBox. But first, we got to finish out the wide receiver position. Sub 5K, starting at the 5K range, my friend, and going down. Can we talk about the Minnesota Vikings? Because these are guys that had a ton of ownership earlier in the week. Tons and tons of ownership. It's kind of fallen by the wayside. I think people are a little bit worried about the Jordan Addison 5,700, a little bit worried about the KJ Osborne 4,400. TJ Hawkinson at the tight end position has been getting steamed as we've gone along this entire week as well. But Do you think there's anything to mine out of it against this putrid Bears secondary? Because I have no idea how much Powell's going to be out there, or if they're going to go to 12 personnel more, or what they're planning on doing, but I don't like it.
They use 12 a little bit. You already see Josh Oliver on the field a fair amount. But I'm still expecting Addison and Osborne to be your top two guys. I think the lower ownership throughout the week makes sense. I mean, you have a million alternatives in this range, but that's an awesome game. I'd be trying to pick on the Bears defense in any way you can. So I'm playing these guys. From there, you've got Lockett, Nico Collins, Terry McLaurin. Christian Kirk is going to be among the most popular in this range. Marquise Brown being healthy enough to play, so it seems, at 5,300. I have a ton of these guys in this range, which is why I don't have as much in the 6K range. To rank them, just in a vacuum, if you're playing like one lineup or something, I would do Christian Kirk 1. This is the game I like the most. Nose Jones helps his target share, and he should be on the field every snap without him. From there, I don't have strong preferences beyond it. Marquise Brown would be 2, assuming he plays and is anywhere close to full health. And then we go to the Lockett's, the Addisons, and the Nico Collins after that.
Sub 4K, should we just move ourselves all the way down to the bottom of the barrel? Because Robert Woods, he's starting to get steamed up a little bit. He's active, no Tank Dell. Nico Collins and him pulling identical ownership, it looks like, in our projections. I guess Kendrick Bourne's 4,200. I'll cheat a little bit and throw one above 4K there, even though I don't really like getting to New England all that much here in this spot. I think they'll do just enough here, kind of like the over of that football game, throwing that in there as well for the people, but more so the Vegas side. Probably should have just bet Vegas outright, but such is life. Anything sub 4K to help people round out their lineups and get the studs that they're looking for?
Below 4K is pretty dicey today. I'm going to include Josh Downs because we kind of skipped over his range a little bit.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Love Josh Downs.
He's my favorite cheap play if you're willing to consider him at 4,100 as like a cheap option. Really good target share. Minshew's going to help him. They're just going to throw the ball more than they were with Anthony Richardson. So he's my favorite cheap play. Below 4K, I don't have a ton of these guys. I don't think you need to get there with Chuba Hubbard and Downs, and there's a really healthy 5K range. But you mentioned Woods. I think he would be the guy you look to first. You have really thin plays beyond that. Michael Wilson, basically the wide receiver 3 for Arizona. He plays a ton, and occasionally he catches like the 2 touchdown game, but it's not, you don't feel good about it. Rashid Shaheed down here, Darnell Mooney, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like, these are all really thin plays. I even have some Jonathan Mingo, Rondale Moore. But overall, I'm finding myself landing on the Downs range and the 5K range more so than anything down in this 3K punt city.
Punt City, I love it. We've got just over 30 minutes left of our program here today, everybody. Smash that like button for us as we talk a little bit about OwnersBox super quickly here. Again, the lovely sponsor of our show, of this program, and it's the best place you could possibly pull your money up on, or put your money down on. There we go. That's the better way of saying that. Put your money down on for today. And why? It's called Overlay. Check out the screen. 5,526 out of nearly 10,000 total entries there, just over half full. Overlay is how you build and sustain a bankroll. Overlay is the best possible thing you can do to help you win long-term in the DFS space, period. And our tools are fantastic. There's no question, but Overlay is really when you're going to start making your hay, when you get paid to be able to jump into these contests, when you are paying 0 or less than 0 rake. It's a phenomenal site because you get the Superflex concept. Matt Gajewski, he's a king of the college football streets. One of the best parts about playing in the college football streets and tailing him over there is that when he puts his projections together and you piece everything together, you are going to get so many quarterbacks in that Superflex, and you get really fun lineup builds. You get those games that shoot out. You get an opportunity to have the entire portfolio of the game. You can't necessarily do that on DraftKings the way that you want to. Only one quarterback you'll ever be playing with there. Lots of opportunity at OwnersBox between the overlay, between the different style of lineups to get yourself exposure to different parts of the NFL, different parts of this specific slate every single week. We have the Sims tool that is basically helping you put together the best possible OwnersBox lineup. So if you have that already, you don't really need to put in all that much effort to be able to build positive EV lineups, especially when you calculate in the overlay. Right now, we've got up to a $250 bonus, $250 deposit. If you put $250 in, you get $250 back from them, a minimum $10 that you could put in and get $10 back from them. Great stuff in terms of a deposit bonus. So between the overlay, between the lineups, the way that you're able to build out those lineups, and between the bonus for depositing, no reason you shouldn't be checking out OwnersBox right now, more than 30 minutes before the slate locks. Get over there now. Get yourself exposure to one of the best upcoming sites that exists in the DFS space. Thank you so much to OwnersBox. Again, take advantage of it. Lots of other little great deals you're going to get along with it. You'll get like a $5 lightning lineup, $5 contest ticket, lots of things. Again, a minimum $10 deposit, up to $250 you can get back from OwnersBox. Great stuff, friends. Let's jump over to the tight end position. Are you ready? Anything else at wide receiver?
I think we hit on most of the players I'm getting to. If you have a question, of course, throw it in the chat and we'll try to get to it.
All right. I'm going to start expensive here. I want to talk about Evan Engram because now he is the guy who's gotten absolutely steamed up at this position like crazy. It makes me mad. I'm going to be shorting Zach Ertz, Dalton Schultz. My God, it's whatever. But TJ Hawkinson, 7.5% ownership. This feels like the spot where if it's going to go anywhere, in the absence of Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson's the Minnesota Viking I feel the most confident is going to see the biggest bump absent one Justin Jefferson. Do you feel the same way, Matt? And how much are you going to plan on getting to him, considering he's kind of an overpay at 6,600, but might not be an overpay relative to his role for very long?
Yeah, I agree with you. He's probably the most likely to see a jump in targets, but he already had a pretty good target share, and I don't think there's like that much room for growth. And I'm still not playing him because he's really expensive on a slate where, I mean, he doesn't really separate from the other tight ends at the position. You can look at the volume. It's been fine, but I mean, 8 targets, 5 catches, 51 yards last week. The game prior, 3 targets, 2 catches, 24 yards. Best game by far was in that week 3, 11 targets, 8 receptions, 78 yards. I mean, he's basically Zach Ertz at 6,600. So, I mean, how much additional volume does he need to pay off 6,600? He probably needs like 3 scores or like a crazy efficiency that he hasn't displayed. So I would rather just punt and play a cheap guy because TJ Hawkinson has been no different this year.
Yeah, it feels like an overpay, but also, again, it's something I think against the Bears in Soldier Field, obviously weather depending, I think it looks actually okay. I was pulling that up here before the show, and I think TJ Hawkinson, as much as I wanted to jam him here in this spot, I'm going to be going to the cheap end like everybody else here. Sam Laporta, George Kittle, not even luxury items. Sam Laporta's dinged up and George Kittle in like the worst game environment of the entire slate. Dallas Goedert is where the conversation starts, I believe. Coming off of, you called it, absolute smash by Dallas Goedert there. 28.7 DraftKings points, 9 targets, tutty and over 100. Really great stuff. I don't know what else to say. Dallas Goedert, 4,800. I'm shocked to see him at 5.7%. The Jets, they haven't been anything crazy good against the tight end position. And, well, they're missing some pieces. I feel pretty good about Dallas Goedert here at 4,800 for tournaments. I think Cole Kmet going to be somebody people land on a lot. And Evan Engram talked about it before, getting completely steamed up. In this 4K range, anybody you're landing on quite a bit?
Evan Engram, I think, is the best play in this range. Again, an attachment to that game environment I like a lot. No Zay Jones definitely helps him. But with the ownership coming up, I would rather play Goddard, who I think is a more talented player and a more explosive offense with an elite team total. With Goddard, you're just taking on the risk of Philly's almost, San Francisco light in the way they have their pass catchers utilized. Any one of them could blow up for a big game at any point in time. You just might be eating like 2 for 20 with Goddard. You also could get like 11 for 87 in 2 scores. It's just his game and the way Philadelphia plays his offense. But when you have that ceiling, I'll take shots on it at 4,800. He has a ceiling that I view pretty different compared to the other tight ends in this range. So he would be my favorite. Engram would be my second because I don't have a ton of interest in Kmet, Henry, or Higbee.
All right. Before we talk about the punts there, 2 super chats. James Recruiter, $1.99. Best $4,800 for flex on DK. I bring that up because I saw Dallas Goedert was at 4,800 and it reminded me I should do my job and answer these super chats. So 4,800 from Dallas Goedert. You could probably go double tight end, but I probably wouldn't. Although he gives you late swap ability. I'm happy with that. Who's your favorite 4,800 flex for DK today, Matt?
Chuba Hubbard.
There you go. Yep. 4,400, a little bit cheaper, or 4,300, excuse me, but really good stuff. I think him in that Carolina-Miami spot. Interesting to have him, Adam Thielen, at low enough ownership. I think Thielen ends up getting jammed a little bit, but we shall see. We shall see. And then we got to do the 100 yards and the touchdown. Michael Pittman, that was always going to be it. That was always going to be mine.
Josh Downs. We're going to be duking it out in Indy, or Gardner Minshew's throwing for 400. I don't know what it's going to be, but hopefully it's the latter.
I'm going down, baby. No street in a Range Rover. Really? We're doing that? Also, that was Nelly again, just for you jerk. Nelly is a rapper.
No, he's not. He's a pop star.
Nelly's a rapper.
Nelly's a pop star.
Corey Ballmer, member for 15 months. Thank you. Mommy and Daddy are fighting at the dinner table. Reek and Foreman or Ridley and Josh Jacobs?
That's really hard. I think I'm going to go with the Ridley side. I feel better about the floors of both of those players, whereas Foreman, it's kind of the Raheem Mostert question. You could tell me Foreman has like 80% of the running back opportunities, or you could tell me he's in a timeshare, and I wouldn't be surprised.
I know, chat. It hurts my feelings too. To the punts on the tight end position, lots of different pieces we can take shots on. Logan Thomas, Kyle Pitts, welcome back to the program, gentlemen. Logan Thomas, you're an elder statesman at this point, but you're still out there running tons of routes, and now you're in a dome in Atlanta. Yay. And at the other side of that game, Kyle Pitts, he has a pulse. He does live 11 targets. It's beautiful to see. It's so beautiful. David Njoku, 37. Yeah, I'm not going to play anything from Cleveland today. That's just not going to happen. But 3,500 and under, your favorite punts. Also, I'm going to play Irv Smith again, and I'm already a broken person.
You made me go 3,500 and under because I like Dalton Schultz a lot.
You can talk about Dalton Schultz. That's fine. I like it. That's a great call.
And Ertz is there too. Like Ertz is going to be one of the most owned tight ends. So we need to at least mention that.
Sure, we can mention all of them. I was going to say sub 4K. There you go. Enjoy.
Between Ertz, Schultz, and Logan Thomas, who do you personally like the most? I like Schultz the most.
I personally like Zach Ertz the most, and not because I want to play Zach Ertz, but it's because he's in the afternoon.
That's fair. I get that. It's also the best game if you just look at like totals and back and forth ability. I happen to think the Indy game's a little sneakier, but just on paper, that is a very good game environment. Anyway, I like Schultz the most. I think he's the most talented of these three at this point in their careers. Their volume's not very different. You're just taking on maybe a worse game environment. But I mean, all the same things we're talking about with Zay Jones being out and, like Justin Jefferson being out and these tight ends getting a bump. Well, Tank Dell's out for Houston. What if Schultz just gets an extra target in the same logic that we're using to potentially give extra volume to these other dusty tight ends? Could happen in Houston too. Haven't seen anyone say that. And again, Schultz is just flat out a better tight end than Ertz and Thomas. So with the same volume, same price tag, I'll take my shots on the lower owned Dalton Schultz.
Yeah, I like Dalton Schultz. But again, for me, a lot of what I'm planning on doing is using information from the first 6-7 games that we have on the slate and using it to inform the last 4. And I think the tight end position is probably the easiest place to go out and do that. Dallas Goedert's 4,800. If somebody goes for a mega ceiling game at tight end, whether it's a Cole Kmet, whether it's a, God forbid, George Kittle in a terrible game environment and goes nuts again, I'm going to probably play more Goddard simply because I need to have access to that. And you're not really getting a lot from 4 spots in your, or like a 6-point or an 8-point game from somebody in your lineups by completely punting. But if nobody torches the early slate of games at the tight end position, I have so many ways of building out my lineups and so many ways of just like having the ultimate access to it, to play some Sam Laporta even as somebody who nobody will click on, where there's an opportunity to get extremely different and not having to get stupid, where I can build out lineups exactly the way I want to in the afternoon.
Yeah, I think that strategy makes sense. I'm not going into the afternoon like trying to get extra afternoon guys. Like I'm not going to forego good plays in the morning.
No. I get what you're saying. For me, it's simply like if you're building out like 3 main lineups and I'm trying to get like the maximum edge to them in like a 3 max, or if I'm trying to like For me, it's like I'm not playing 150 today. I normally do. Obviously, I'm not at home right now, so I wanted to kind of condense it down a little bit. So I think I'm talking more specifically for the way I'm building out lineups for this week, where just having extra access to the afternoon is better than and going to take priority than something like having to force in Dalton Schultz in the early window. Because again, if Dalton Schultz goes for 20, you're going to be really pissed off you didn't have Dalton Schultz.
Your approach is sound. I like what you're doing.
Yeah. Anyway, more super chats. Jorge Yakum, thoughts on Minnesota wide receivers? Are we buying Powell? I am not buying Powell this week. Again, I do think Josh Oliver and Johnny Munt, I think both of them are going to rotate in more. This is obviously my team, and I feel like I've watched them do this multiple times when it was Adam Thielen that was hurt or Justin Jefferson hurt. They're going to go to more 12 personnel. They have a team that's built more for 12 personnel in these kind of absences. Nobody's going to replace Justin Jefferson, but I do think you probably have somebody like you got KJ Osborne jumping over to the X. You're going to keep Addison in a similar role, hopefully on the field more. And I just don't think Powell, you're going to rotate in as much. How do you feel, Matt?
I agree with you. They're definitely going to use more 12 personnel. I was kind of surprised how much they used it to begin the year, but they signed Josh Oliver, paid him, and seemed to like him a little bit. I don't happen to think Powell's particularly talented, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see some other random guys on their team rotate in with him. I definitely prefer Osborne and Addison over him.
All right. Take a C, James, $1.99. Mostert or Walker to get different in a lineup? Well, Mostert will not be different. He's the most popular running back. I love him, though. And Kenneth Walker against Cincinnati, they give up a ton on the ground. I don't mind him as a pivot to get different, but yeah, Mostert not going to be a different piece at all.
Nope, he's going to be heavily owned.
Coley Poston, $4.99. I've heard Bryce Young mention none this week. He's going to throw near 100 passes, right? Yeah, maybe 2 yards out to Adam Thielen over and over.
To the other team. I love Bryce Young. He's cost me a lot of money too. So you don't have to twist my arm to play some greasy Bryce Young stacks. I have a little bit, but I'm trying to temper my expectations after he has been awful.
You could just donate that money to charity instead, Matt, and be a good person.
I'm a man of the people. Hopefully the people in the chat have been getting some of my losses from playing that greasy Carolina stack. But today will not be the day. We're bouncing back.
We're bouncing back, baby. Any $2,500 punt de jours that you would only know from the college streets for today?
Oh,
do we have any? Go ahead.
I don't have any in my lineups, but man, do you have one you want to like? Josh Oliver might play more than you think. He's 2,500.
I'm part of me that's where this line of thinking is going is like Josh Oliver goal line. We saw it against the Chargers week three it was. I could click on his name and find it. Week 3.
Michael Mayer.
Yes. Got it right. Good job, Eric. I win a cookie or something.
Michael Mayer. He's not really greasy, but he's 2,500.
Yep. Malcolm Revamp, $1.99. I'm late. Sorry, Eric. Don't apologize. We still have 18 minutes left. We're going to talk defense, which I think is actually a fun position to talk about this week because of San Francisco and their price and what we're going to possibly do to get different or play them or God forbid. I don't know. We're still talking about defense in the year of our Lord 2023, but Malcolm Revamp, $1.99. Your anytime touchdown, Michael Pittman, plus 210 at FanDuel.com.
I don't have the odds because I'm in an illegal state. I guess I could look, but it's not something that's on my radar in the morning because of that. We're talking about all these Colts receivers. I really like Downs today as a DFS play and think that Colts pass catchers are going to get a target upgrade with Minshew. Not that Richardson's a bad quarterback, but he just doesn't throw as much as Minshew. So I don't know if Downs even has a line. I imagine he does at some point, but I do like Downs today.
Really hate that I'm actually like entertaining this now. Josh Downs. Downs. That's a Blink 182 song. Can we get behind Blink 182? Rock band?
I know a couple of their songs. Yeah, I don't dislike them.
Can't go back to San Diego. We got a one-way ticket. Good stuff. Josh Downs, 4.5 receptions. Actually positive EV over at OddsShopper here right now. Plus 130 here going that direction. His anytime touchdown scorer number is plus 330. Hello. How is your
I like yours
day?
more. At 330, I would rather take Pittman.
I would rather take Pittman at plus 210, and I would rather take Josh Downs over 4.5 total receptions if I were going to do anything there. I have personally not, so I will take a look. Maybe there's something to utilize later in the day here. But yeah, Josh Downs, I guess he's locking in 16 minutes. So hopefully that helped you out. Probably not looking at him for an anytime touchdown, but yes, Michael Pittman plus 210. That is a can't miss. It's my favorite. It's like my favorite anytime touchdown, period. End of story. All right. To the defense position we go. Oh, before we do that, got to talk a little bit of Bet365 because this is a really great deal. Again, 16 minutes here left before the NFL slate locks, and then you've got a whole afternoon of bets to go through the gamut on, take a look at. Odd Shopper can help you with that. Stochastic, we got NFL Bet Pro. Lots of great content here over at Stochastic to help you parse through the best bets every single day. But 6 states, Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, and Colorado. Bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets over at Bet365. This is one of the biggest sports books in the world, period. It has jumped over stateside, but only for 6 states to try out: Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, Colorado. If you're in one of those 6, congrats. All you have to do is go deposit $5 or more, bet $5 on anything. It could be a Josh Downs anytime touchdown, but you know what? That becomes positive EV when you have on the backside $150 in bonus bets coming back to you. So I would be taking advantage of that if I were in one of those 6 states. I repeat, I know I've said it a lot, but Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, Colorado. If you're in one of those 6, go to the link immediately and take advantage of this promotion. Because again, $5 into $150 seems like a pretty decent deal if you ask me. Again, that's $150 in bonus bets, only if you're 21 and over, 18 and over in Kentucky. And if you have a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. You ready to round this out? Defense, my friend. My highest owned defense is the most expensive defense on the board. I am playing tons of 4K San Francisco, which is insane. But because of the 6K range, talked about Michael Pittman, Calvin Ridley, so many pieces I like in it, I'm not finding it all that cost prohibitive to be able to get to them on this specific slate. How are you playing defense? Are you going to be playing the 49ers with me?
They're my most owned defense, but they're at 16% of my lineups, followed by Detroit at 15, Minnesota 15. And I spread my defenses pretty evenly. So you're going to see this. I'm never really going to be that much higher than 15 to 20% of the defense. But yeah, it just so happens they're ahead of the pack by a couple lineups.
I also love this Houston and New Orleans spot. The Houston defense, I think they've been a lot better than people are giving them credit for. The fact that they're up to 15th in PFF grading was a little bit surprising to me this week. And so I kind of did a little bit more looking into it. And maybe I'm just kind of falling in love with specific players. But Blake Cashman is kind of that dude at the linebacker position. His coverage grade is first out of every linebacker in the NFL. He is actually the first ranked linebacker, period, in the NFL this season. On one side at cornerback, you have Steven Nelson just creating havoc. You've got Shaquille Griffin, who I think is still pretty serviceable to a certain extent, although he should have some issues with Olave today to some extent. And then to round it all out, Will Anderson on the edge. He's been actually working out for this football team. So I got to say, overall, still not a top 10 defense by any means, but I think that they do enough to create turnovers and do things in coverage and get after the quarterback. And I do not like Derek Carr, 26th in 33 quarterbacks that have been graded by PFF this season. I think this is a sneaky spot to get exposure to the Houston defense. Again, defense takes. Who to thunk at Gajewski? Not me.
I have no issues with that. Love everything you said about the talent on the defense. Biggest factor for me is Derek Carr being the quarterback they will face. He's awful, and he's still battling through an injury. So I don't hate Houston. I still like Detroit here.
Okay.
I agree with you that Tampa Bay is kind of like a good, sneaky shootout team, and Baker's cheap, so that's nice. But on the other end of things, you have a decent offensive line facing Aiden Hutchinson. That's something I will definitely target anytime you can get some pass rush mismatches. I still think Minnesota's fine playing Fields, who's played better right now, but we've seen the bottom fall out on Fields, so I think you can take some shots there. Like New England, and this is terrifying, they're down a lot of their really good players. Judon's not going to play here, but you're facing Garoppolo. That's also pretty nice. So that's why I'm also spreading things out. You could see these defenses pop up for big games or just have the bottom fall out on them too.
I love this Browns D too. I'm surprised people didn't end up clicking on them. Slim Brody giving you a shout out there in the chat. I really think Cleveland on the very, very cheap end there at 2,200 They're just a good defense. And I know that they have the worst offense you could possibly imagine here, rolling out with PJ Walker today. But like 2,200, I'm still willing to take some shots here. San Francisco on the road. They've looked about as good as humanly possible. Shout out Brock Purdy, another Iowa State legend, probably the Iowa State legend when it's all said and done, when we look back on it. But definitely going to be getting myself to some Cleveland defense here as well in large field tournaments. Saquon Barkley, game time decision for the Sunday night game, if anybody gives a flying F. But of course, we've got the Live Before Lock show coming up for that later today. Are you going to be on that with EMAC again?
Yeah, I'm covering for Neil. He did me a solid a couple weeks back when I went to the Packer game and covered Live Before Lock. So you're going to get me twice today.
What a guy. And obviously, as a Vikings fan like I am and like Neil is, there's not a lot that I would do for a person in order for them to attend a game at Lambeau.
I don't know if Neil knew what I was doing. He just agreed to it and didn't ask any questions.
That's the best kind of friend.
Yeah.
That is the best kind of friend. All right. We have no super chats here. We got 10 minutes here. We're going to actually go for 5 more minutes. How does that sound, Jordan Klein? We're going to go for the full 10. We can go the full 10. If anybody has questions, fire those in here. Obviously, we ended up doing 15 extra minutes. I've kind of spaced this out in my brain for 75 minutes. And well, here we are. We could do a little dance. We could hold hands. I heard Matt Gajewski wants to hold hands today.
Love holding hands.
Yeah, love holding hands. Let's revamp. I saw Malcolm revamp there in the chat, but let's revisit, if you will, favorite stack on the board for today.
Mine's Indianapolis, but I like that whole game. So I like the Trevor Lawrence side of things too. I think there's a lot of fun ways you can play it and be contrarian within the game environment too. I like using downs. No issues with Pittman. I know he's a guy you particularly like. Minshew is very cheap, so he allows studs. And then on the other side, I like playing a lot of Ridley as a contrarian piece, pivot off of Christian Kirk and some of the elite guys. I also view him as a pretty damn good receiver, and he's much cheaper than the Jamar Chases of the world too. So I like the lineup constructions you get with him.
Can you tell me about Josh Downs again here? Maybe I'm just missing 4,100 Josh Downs. He had the 12 targets in that game alongside Gardner Minshew in week 3. Is that kind of what you're starring, highlighting, circling when it comes to the Josh Downs play?
Yeah, he's the weekly wagon.
The weekly wagon. That's a good segment that we got to have throughout. We need to have you on like the Oregon Trail holding hands with your wife as you guys are trying to avoid dysentery and other things of that nature. But the weekly wagon. We need to get a graphic for that. Jordan Klein, this is on you, buddy. Making a note. We can pop to a graphic, and I need to have some kind of a sound effect or like a violin playing in a 1860s saloon as you're heading west to find gold. All right, people, any love for Amon-Ra?
Yeah, I think he's a great contrarian play up in that range. No issues with Amon-Ra at all.
Yeah, he's later on in the day, daddy likey a lot. Almost time for a cold beer and a chimichanga from Costco. Sounds about right. I'm here for that. Favorite stack, Kelsey and Swift. Kelsey not on the slate, so that makes it tough. Let's see. Saints defense. Yes, again, I like the Saints defense. I like the so out of my 3 big lineups, I have 1 Texans defense, 1 49ers defense, and 1 New Orleans defense. And then, yeah, I'm scattering Cleveland defense. That's kind of the other one that's showing up a lot for me in the Sims tool too. Sims tool was about that life here for the Browns. Good stuff. So we're to see Detroit playing later. Yeah, at 4:00. Totally is. Totally played with my head a little bit as I was building hand building lineups earlier. But 2 minutes left to rock here. Favorite stack, we already covered that. My favorite stack, I like getting to the Rams the most. They are number 1 in our top stacks right now. I think that they give me opportunities to pivot in that late window of games. That's what I'm planning on doing. I'm going to be doing a lot of late swap here. I think it's a great slate to be able to play Mostert, to play the Michael Pittman and Ridley combinations, things like that, and have pieces of the early games, but then put your stacks together based on updated information. If I miss out on a couple super ceilings, that will really, really suck. But I'm hoping that the super ceilings all come from the afternoon where I can kind of build out my lineups a little bit more with, again, updated information, see exactly how popular Hill, exactly how popular Mostert are, and be able to kind of make my pivots accordingly. Because again, Mostert, he's going to be insanely popular, especially in some of the 3 max stuff that I'm in here today, but going to be awesome there. Favorite running back play relative to ownership, Matt?
Oh, Can I still say Mostert? I mean,
I thought you were going to say Hubbard, actually.
Hubbard's up there too. I'm trying to give the people like a dart. Saying Mostert doesn't really do anything for people. They know he's going to be owned and they know he's a good play. And for a pretty deep cut, you mentioned this earlier, I'm going to keep it in the Miami backfield and use Salvon Ahmed. Dart throw, you play him in case this is a timeshare, which Raheem Mostert's been in through most of his career. We don't know, but he's cheap and he'll be a pivot off of Chuba Hubbard. This is for very large field tournaments. This is a deep cut, if you will.
I'm looking at an Ahmed and Josh Downs lineup, and it brings tears to my eyes. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful to look at that it's like looking into the sun, into the eclipse that everybody was looking at yesterday. Beautiful stuff overall here. But we have reached the end of our boarding walk here. Check out OwnersBox. Once again, massive overlay, massive opportunity to be able to jump over at a site that has not yet been solved, that has not yet been exploited by the top players in the world and been figured out by everybody. Jump over to OwnersBox, jump in there, get yourself some money, get yourself some overlay. Great stuff overall. Definitely be taking advantage of that here for sure. Going to be excited. We'll have the normal crew back together next week. Forward to that for sure. But then, yeah, it'll still be Matt and myself, unless he goes to Lambeau again, and then I can't really do anything about it. But looking forward
to Lambeau
another
again this year.
You are going to Lambeau again?
No, I'm not. I'm done.
Okay. You got the come from behind New Orleans W, and you were just like, I'm done now. I'm
can't
satisfied.
do it. I ruined my week. It was very, very hard to come back from and work after that game
because you ate too much, right?
I did have like 3 hot dogs.
Why?
I love hot dogs. They're my favorite food.
I know they are, but like, why eat 3 of them and drink copious amounts of fluids?
I had 3 hot dogs on Friday at a high school game.
Rasa Music, member for 11 months. We're going to end on this one. Last super chat here. Jonu or Curtis Samuel, last man in. Thank you, guys. You are so very welcome. I'm not a huge fan of either, but if you made me Curtis Samuel out of the slot against Atlanta, I could probably get down with it.
Same.
All right, y'all. That does it. Glizzy Gobbler.
Hot dogs are
holding
awesome.
Hands and knocking down doggies, and I don't know what. Just wild. You're a wild human being. Matt Gajewski, Matt_Gajewski over on X. Go give him a follow. Thank you to Jordan D. Klein. You can follow him over on the Twitters as well, posting great things like Josh Engleman clips of him talking about his, well, exposure, if you will. Exposure, that is what it is. I'm Eric Lindquist, everybody. Go follow me at Eric Lindquist. I'm going to go do a little bit of baseball content here. Jump in the Discord, make sure everything looks good. Make sure everybody's bets are in place and ready to rock. I'm going to also double check lineups. You should be doing the same here. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on another NFL Live Before Lock. Been great times. Until next week, best of luck in the NFL streets.